Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and anyone else. My name is Apostate Aladdin. The purpose of this stream is to start conversations between myself and believers, namely Muslims in this case. I would like you to join the stream and tell me what it is that you believe and why you believe that it is the truth. As I've mentioned before, the point is not to prove them wrong or debate them per se, but to get their thoughts on what proves Islam to them, or if that proof is even necessary at all for a believer. So I am currently still waiting on people to join the stream. The link is pinned in the live chat if you would like to join. And in the meantime, let me stall a little bit. And if you're watching this after the fact, then feel free to skip ahead in the chapters. They should be timestamped below. So, what did I want to talk about before we begin? So I'll give you a brief overview of upcoming projects that I'm working on. I'd like you to remind me, in the comments, be like, "Where's this video or that video?" to help me stay motivated and on task a bit. So one of my one of my upcoming videos would be about Prophet Muhammad and his view on women. And I'll be talking about many examples where, from Hadith and the Quran, even in the Quran, examples where it may seem like the way that he handled the situation was harmless, but it actually shows a very harmful side to him or to his preaching. So I'm looking forward to that. And since Ramadan is coming up, I might just make it a series of shorter videos, might be even 5 minutes long or so each. I'm still trying to figure that out. And speaking of length of videos, I know a lot of people don't want to sit through a whole live stream. So if you would like to help them out and you're watching this, especially after the live stream is over, if you're watching this off the air, then feel free to put some timestamps of moments that you found to be important, or just in general of new callers calling in and so on. That'll help me segment it and use some of these clips for other people to watch in shorter videos. I'm also working on a video that is going to be long, and that one is about the scientific miracles. It should hopefully end this idea of a scientific miracle once and for all. And I realized that I have to I have to title the videos and clickbait in a very provocative way to get people to actually watch the content of the video. So I might title it something like, ending the scientific miracles in Islam or something of the sort. I see some commenters are saying that they would join, but they're too shy. Well, feel free. I hope that you're comfortable calling in at some point, but no pressure. And it is 3 a.m. in some time zones. It's hard for me to find a time that works for everybody, so I'm trying it out. And it seems like this time is very unpopular for a lot of people because not getting a lot of viewers today or callers. So I'll just keep stalling till we get a caller in the waiting room. What else? There's a big announcement coming up, hopefully within a few days. You're not going to want to miss it. It's let's say it's just very haram, and it's up to you whether you want to click on it or not. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah. And I've been trying to keep a steady stream of content going on. And it doesn't mean that you have to watch every single video. Of course, you should take breaks. And if you want to come back to it, you can watch some of my older videos. And I appreciate any interaction that you perform, like mention the videos elsewhere if you can, comment on the video, and so on. All this sort of stuff. It really helps. Oh no, Aladdin is pregnant out of wedlock. No comment. No comment. Thank you, music guy, for letting people know. And LOL says, I love the fact that you give a voice to everyone. Well, I try. I do my best. Thank you. Australian represent. There's a lot of Australians tuning in right now, even though it's a very bad time for you. I mean, time zone wise. Okay, well, still waiting on people to join. If all else fails, if no Muslims call in today, then I suppose I can turn this to an open call-in show or Q&A or something, and I'll just change the title and um, thumbnail or something after the fact. So for the time being, feel free to interact in the live chat. Ask me anything, I suppose, and let's stall till people join. Did I watch the modern day debates yesterday? No, I did not. And I try not to watch a lot of this type of content when I'm not specifically trying to make content or something. Like I want to tune out sometimes. Oh, thank you for the super chat, Miho Courtesy. Courtesy? What kind of name is that, if you don't mind me asking? Um, Thank you for the super chat. They're saying, keep doing videos, brother. Great content. Much love from Sweden. Oh, well, thank you for um, your nice comment from all the way from Sweden. Can we discuss Sheikh Uthman, says Marco Uno? So, not really, because I don't know that much. So I'll tell you what I know, and I'll tell you what I think so far. Um, I all I know is I've heard a lot of rumors, so I'm not gonna repeat them. There's rumors about what kind of altercation it is. It seems so far that it's not a religious altercation. It may be, no clue. But what I did witness was a community post by Apostate Prophet, where he believes that this did happen because there are a lot of people alleging that it didn't, and they're saying that he lied before about another incident. Again, I don't have the facts about that, so not going to take a side on it. But I found it interesting that a lot of the comments were saying either way, like if it did actually happen, that's not a good thing. And we hope him a good recovery, even though we hate what he says, including what he says about if things were to go his way, the Islamic way, what would legally have to happen to apostates and so on. But if you see an equivalent video from the other side of the aisle, ooh, it's all the comments are like, "Oh, they got what they deserved. It's better. It's going to be worse in the afterlife," and so on and so forth. So I just noted that even though we have such an awful reputation, I often see comments that are nicer than from the other side. Just saying. That's not to vilify the other side, but I want them to take a very good look at how they're behaving and how Islamic that is, I suppose. Yeah, so nothing else further to discuss. I don't really have any more facts than you. So Henna Olaria says, Aladdin, I'm personally curious, is there something about Islam, be it in the field of metaphysics or whatever, that remains endearing to you? Did you try relying on the spiritual over the ideological? Good question. Not really, because so in my case, when I realized that it is not the truth, but not only that, that there's a lot of harm that comes out of it, even unintentional, not that believers are evil or anything, but when you totally believe an idea, you take, for the most part, you are vulnerable to taking whatever it is that comes with it, especially when it comes to something as totalitarian as a religion. So I was just repulsed by so much in it that I can't appreciate if there's any sort of metaphysical, spiritual beauty there. I just find that very hard to appreciate given everything else that I know and given what I observe about how Islam affects people. So, no, unfortunately, there's nothing there. I mean, I've mentioned this before. I think sadaqah is a good thing, zakah is a good thing, except that zakah is only given to Muslims. So I don't like that aspect of it. But there are decent things and neutral things in Islam, but I find it hard to appreciate anything about the spiritual and unseen when the rest of it is just gibberish. So we do have a caller. Sohaib is in the back. Please let me know in the private chat. Like I said, just a brief overview of who you are and what you want to talk about, and I'll be adding him in a minute. I'll take a couple of questions in the meantime. James Jake says, what are your thoughts on alien life? Do you think they have religion? So you've already presumed that they exist. I don't know if there's an alien life or not. I would presume that there might be some form of life somewhere out there in the universe, but there's nothing that's known about that. I really have no answer for that. If they're intelligent, do they have a religion? I don't know. Is the Kalam cosmological argument fallacious? So I don't like getting involved in that argument because I find it to be pointless. Because at the end of the argument, all you've proven, if you find it not fallacious, is that there's a need for a first cause or a creator or a designer or something of the sort. But how does it tie it to a specific religion? That's the part that's never really answered. So I don't bother with the whole thing. It seems fallacious to me. There are points in it that are debatable, but I'm not going to get in depth into it because, like I said, I don't want to get roped into it. I don't really care about it. Yeah, so I do have a private chat from Sohaib as a Muslim, and he wants to discuss how his reasoning for his prescription are as logical as mine. All right, so I'll be adding Sohaib in a few seconds. Before that, I just want to answer this one question. As an atheist, can you think of anything bad about what Jesus preached or did? If yes, could you give a few examples? At the moment, I have nothing on my mind because I haven't studied the life of Jesus enough to give you an answer. So that's my answer, I suppose. Okay, so Sohaib, I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going, Sohaib?
Oh, hi there, Apostate. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. I'm good, thank you. So basically, I just want to discuss today with regard to how when I make prescriptive statements, how they are just as logical from my perspective as they are from yours.
That's very good. Yeah, please proceed.
Okay. So the first question I want to ask you is, when you decide something is, so for example, we have normative statements such as, say, 2% of women are raped, let's say, for example. How do we move from that to the prescriptive statement? So that's a descriptive statement, sorry. And how do we move from that to a prescriptive statement such as we should reduce, or we should attempt to reduce rape, or rape should be illegal?
So then you need to have you need to think in between that rape is bad, right? And we
Yes.
need to do something to reduce that. Yeah.
Yes. So we do that by having axioms, right? And an axiom is essentially a properly basic belief. It's defined as, so it's something which cannot be rationally. You don't come to it rationally. So, for example, your axiomatic belief may be, I want to reduce, or I want to maximize happiness for all sentient creatures, right?
Right.
That could be
as much as it's that's very hard to stick to, but yeah, as much as possible. Yeah.
As much as possible, yes. Yeah. And another person can have an axiomatic belief of divine command theory. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they follow a book and they just, go by that book. And each of these two things, these two axiomatic beliefs, they are arrived at as rationally as one another. There's no difference between the rationality or the amount of rationality required to reach these axiomatic beliefs. Do you agree?
I need to think about that for a moment. So there is no difference in the amount of rationality needed. I'm inclined to agree, but I think there's more to it than that, because then we arrive at the results which are not equally rational.
Okay. How would you say the results are not equally rational?
So for example, this axiom, that divine command theory, mm-hmm. it's not been proven that this is a divine command, right? Yep. So, and then what we see is when we do follow these commands, a lot of them that are supposed to minimize this harm don't actually do so.
But say, for example, my axiomatic belief is not to reduce harm. It's to just follow a book, even regardless of whether it causes more harm or less harm. Your axiom is to reduce harm or to maximize happiness. Okay. I'm saying that the axiom itself is arrived at without any reason. So your axioms to reduce harm or to maximize happiness is just and compare that to divine command theory. They're just as rational as one another.
Well, not really, because minimizing harm, for example, we have to agree at some point that harm is bad, right? Do you agree that harm is bad?
Why would it be bad?
Well, we have to at some point. Here's the thing: we can keep trying to go back and forth.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'd like to get this from you. You can have both, right? You do believe in a divine command theory, but you believe that harm is bad, right? Like pain is bad. Perception of pain is a bad thing because we see the effects of it is like we understand as humans what crying means. That this is pain. Do you not agree on that axiom?
We can understand what pain is, but why is pain or inflicting pain bad?
Here's the thing: at some point it becomes almost like too philosophical and not really useful to go down to that level, because we already agree on that. Do we, or do we not agree that pain is bad?
Not rationally, we cannot agree that pain is bad. Rationally, you can have an axiomatic belief that pain is bad, but that's only obtained through your own feelings or your genetics, etc. It's nothing to do with you can't reason it, right? Because if
Right,
you
but
keep going back, if I say, for example, if we say rape is wrong, right, and then I ask you why rape is wrong, and you said, oh, because you inflict pain, and then I say, why is inflicting pain bad, and you keep going on and on, and you just become circular, right? So your axiom cannot be rationalized, but all your arguments should go or be based on your axioms, right?
no,
So
but
it's like
here's the
yeah.
thing. If you're saying we can't rationalize it, therefore it's just as rational, I don't agree, because like I said, I think it's more productive to go from the point where we already agree. So you already agree. Do you agree that as an axiom, pain is bad or harm is bad for humans? Let's just, make it specific.
From a Islamic perspective, I believe purely in divine command theory. Okay, so it doesn't matter if to me if pain is. I can't rationalize that. My rationale begins with the divine command theory. Your rationale begins with I want to minimize
Sure,
suffering.
let's presume that they're both just as rational of an axiom
Yes,
to begin from. So where do you go from there? How do you prove your divine command theory?
I don't need to
Uh,
prove divine command theory because it's an axiom. It's an ought statement, right? You cannot rationalize an ought statement.
but you
It's
can
the
dismiss it given everything else about how religion is not proven, for example. And not only that, we see things that are contradictory in Islam, that wouldn't hold unless God is also has the characteristic of being a liar on top of the other characteristics, which as a Muslim you're supposed to believe he doesn't. So my
even
point
if he
here
does
is,
or doesn't, it wouldn't matter to me because my axiom is just as rational as yours because you cannot reason that pain is bad or that suffering is bad. You cannot reason it. Therefore, my axiom of following a book, any book, it doesn't have to be the Quran, it could be the Bible, it could be the Torah, it could be anything. It is just as rational as your initial statement that states that we want to maximize happiness. You've only arrived at that position from your feelings, as I may have arrived at my position from my feelings, not through any rational, you know.
so here's my thought about that. So I need to think a little bit more about the axiom part of it. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can give you a straight answer now, but let's take this to the conclusion. So if we both whatever reasoning we use to arrive at our conclusions, what you're saying is basically it's hard to trust someone who starts with a divine command theory because they don't even agree that pain is bad objectively, right? They will do whatever it is that the divine command theory says, but not only that,
Yes.
whatever interpretation it is.
Yes. Yes. So interpretation can differ. But say I'm following divine command theory. I would say, for example, I would follow the Quran to its word. Whatever it says is my command, and that's what I would enact upon, regardless of whether it harms society or it betters society. By the way, not many people think from this perspective. Most people are on your side, even Muslims. So even the hardcore Muslims like Daniel Haqiqat Jew, he's not a
They do
divine command.
rationalize it that way. Yeah, they do think it's divine command, but it's also good for us, and this is how it's rationalized. Yeah.
No, I would say it's the other way around. Daniel Haqiqat Jew believes that a society which is, say, pre-enlightenment
Mm.
is a better society for people. People will be happier in that society. He uses Islam as a vehicle to get to that position. So he's he's on the same axiomatic principles as you. Okay. So you can debate him, and you can maybe even convince him, or people who think like that. Someone who thinks purely on a divine command theory basis as an axiom, you can never convince them. All you can do is kill them. That's the only thing you can do.
Here's the thing. The only thing you can kill them is what you're saying. I don't know if I agree with that, but let's take it back. Let's take it back a notch. So what I can't speak for Daniel about how he rationalizes his beliefs, but this is my hypothesis, is that he thinks both things somehow simultaneously, that God, it's not that he wants the best society and Islam is the best way to arrive at that. I think, you know what, actually no, I can't make any statements about that. Never mind.
Do you know why I say that? Do you know why I say that? Just because of what's happened in his life. I won't go into it, but I think you might be aware of what's happened in his life, earlier in his life. And if you look at the discussions he has, they are always on modernity. That he hardly, well, he occasionally, but hardly ever talks about Tawheed, for example, the most important principle within the faith. He hardly discusses that. He even sometimes promotes or tries to promote Christianity, because he says that we could work together, for example, to like I've seen him with David Wood say we could work together to go to a society which is Enlightenment kind of society. And
wait, I want to bring it back to the topic here.
Okay,
so let me take a second to ask you first. Do you believe in? I mean, is that how you think, the divine command theory?
Personally, no, I don't. But I can see it from that perspective. I can see that a person who thinks from that mindset would be just as rational as me.
So, what would get them to think in that mindset? Why do they think that way?
For example, they could. Well, it would be through their own feelings, maybe the way they were raised. That would apply the same to me and you as well. Okay, the way we are raised results in, or maybe the way we feel, maybe our genetics, combination of all of those things, makes us think that maximizing happiness for humanity as much as we can is the best thing to do. In the same way, a person may believe or come to the conclusion that just following the Quran or the Hadith in just a rigid, like word for word manner is their axiom. And so, for example, we'll have an ethical framework to arrive at our conclusions. So we'll have, for example, like I'm a what do you call it? I'm a I've just lost the words. I'm a consequentialist, yeah, and I'm a utilitarian. So that's my ethical framework that I use to get my views. It's probably similar to yours, yeah. Whereas someone who believes in the like I mentioned, the ethical framework of so. Sorry, I'm just losing my head here. Sorry, 1 second.
That's okay.
Just in my car. Yeah. So for example, someone who believes in divine command theory may believe that having the Quran and Hadith and whatnot, the ethical framework could be similar to ours. It might be consequentialist, etc. But they use the Quran to get to that position, to their conclusions.
Right. I think I somewhat agree with that. I don't think anyone really works using axioms and rationality to arrive at their conclusions, just purely that. At least that's not how they start. So the way that people get into their beliefs usually is not through rationality. It's very rare that happens. But once you get to that point, you think that, or that kind of person, the only solution, as you said, is to kill them. Why do you think that is? That if someone has like divine command theory is the way that they think?
Because you can never convince them, and especially if they're an influencer or they try and convince other people from their perspective, I think that person is very dangerous. And I say that I don't even just say it for religious people. I say the same thing for fascists. So fascists who don't believe in, bettering society. If someone wants to make or follow a particular way of life that will eventually lead to a worse society or people being less happier, I think that's a very dangerous person. If they cannot be convinced from their perspective, then what else can you do?
So I agree with you about a lot of what you said, but not the part about that, the only solution is to kill them. Because so yeah, so you already answered something that I was going to ask, which is, do you think their beliefs can never change, or their rationality can, since they're, according to you, they're employing rationality perfectly well, so there's no way out for them using rationality. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, yes.
So in that case, do you think there's a way to tug on their, heartstrings, or use something else aside from rationality, or point to the conclusions in real life and, take them out of that framework? Is there any way to do that?
Well, if they've gone through a process by which they've arrived at, because most people, they're not aware of axioms, or they're not aware that they've reached their conclusions through an axiomatic process. Those people can be convinced, absolutely, because you can change their perspective, etc. But someone who's rationalized, or they haven't rationalized, or they understand these kind of philosophical points, then it's problematic, I think.
No, I agree that it's problematic and it's difficult to get out of, but do you think philosophers can never change their conclusions?
They can, but the problem is, because I'm a utilitarian and a consequentialist, in the meantime, they're going to be trying to influence people in the world today to make it a worse place.
Isn't there a way to tackle that before the final resolution, which is, in according to what you're suggesting, is killing them? Isn't there any way to stop their influence or reduce the harm and so on?
I don't know. I mean, like, for example, I'm not sure. If you look in America, for example, or in the West in general, we've seen a massive rise in the far right over the past 10 years, and like neo-Nazism has become, especially amongst younger people online, it's become very, very kind of more common than say it was 15 years ago. And they have people who are people, they get banned sometimes off Twitter and YouTube and whatnot, but they're not stupid people. Like Jeff Gariepi, for example, he's a neo-Nazi. He's exceptionally intelligent person, and he can convince, and he has done, many tens, hundreds of thousands to follow neo-Nazism. And I think that's concerning. And there's not many people out there that can kind of challenge his perspective. I mean, it's not like your typical Dawa guy. Some of these people are very, very capable indeed.
So I've got a couple of thoughts about that. I understand your perspective as a utilitarian and a consequentialist, which is it's causing more harm than killing one person would cause, right? Mm-hmm. Like that is the trade-off here, is that killing one person, sure, death is bad, but that's not an axiom, right? That death is bad. Because it depends on the death of who and what the consequences are and so on. I understand where you're coming from there, but I'm not condoning it, and I am still trying to explore that idea with you. So one of the problems with that action is basically you're saying there's nothing rationally wrong with the other side doing a similar thing. Like if they think your position is spreading, So how do you determine which one is better for humanity, or how do you pick and choose between them as an outsider? So what's the criteria? Like, how do you measure which one is better? What does that mean?
I think most people are naturally decent human beings. Their natural inclination is to like help others, or to look after other people, or to want to help others, and it's tugging at that kind of perspective. But
that's not rational, though. That's not, I know it's grounded in rationality.
Because the axioms themselves are not rationalized. So what's important is that the conclusions that we have, they rationally come from our axioms, but we cannot rationalize the axiom itself. But our conclusions should always come from the axioms. So whenever we're thinking something something is positive or negative, etc., should always go back to that initial axiomatic belief, the maximizing of human happiness, or of well-being. Sorry, I think well-being is a much better axiom to have, to maximize the well-being of sentient creatures, of human beings. And then it's just about trying to get conclusions that arrive logically from that perspective and convincing people from that point of view. Because I think majority of people think like, even in the Muslim world, I think most people actually, in their heart of hearts, they're not going to harm another physical person, even if they're an atheist. Like even in like Pakistan, where you have lynchings, right? You know, the majority of people in society, like for example, when that Sri Lankan guy was lynched, they were very disturbed by it, you know? So I think, you know, most people are kind of, like for example, ISIS led to the largest number of Muslims leaving Islam. It wasn't something within the Quran, it wasn't something, etc. It was the
I
actions of
understand your
ISIS.
point here, which is people are emotional. They're not just driven by pure rationality and logic and so on. So here's the dilemma that you have put, you know, me in, if I'm agreeing with you. So if both of those avenues, right, like if taking the axiomatic route of divine command theory and the axiomatic route of minimizing harm or maximizing well-being, right? If they're both equally rational and logical, and you're saying there is no criteria to determine which one is better, because better is relative, right?
Yes.
So how do you know that your position is better? So you're saying you're just relying purely on emotions. To reiterate what you said, it was the natural inclination that humans have. So is that natural inclination axiomatic? What if someone's natural inclination is not like the average, right? If there's something wrong with them,
and then they might fall into fascism or divine command theory. But
no, I disagree. People can still have like the same kind of mentality. Like, for example, Daniel Haqiqatju, according to what you're describing, he still thinks that this is the best for humanity. So he's still kind of following that. But let's say someone is like mentally disturbed, or not even to the point of being too mentally disturbed. But so what I'm asking here is how is that inclination an axiom?
I don't think the inclination itself is an axiom, but I believe. So, for example, someone could be a psychopath, right? And their natural axiom might be, or someone might, for whatever reason, they have maybe the way they were raised, something to do with their genetic makeup, pushes them towards hierarchy, or like a fascist. A fascist just wants it believes hierarchy is the natural part of society and that there must be hierarchy, and everything they do is aimed to building the hierarchy. Their axiom is the hierarchy itself. Whereas I think Daniel, and I think majority of people, even the majority of people who follow these fascists online, they can be convinced. And a great example of that is someone like Vosh online. I don't know if you come across him. He's a YouTuber, and he's convinced tens of thousands of people who'd fallen into this fascist pipeline.
Wait, sorry, you're saying that the axiom is the hierarchy? That is an axiom?
The hierarchy itself could be the axiom. So wanting to establish a hierarchy could be an axiomatic belief. So yeah.
So I'm trying
that would be a fascist. That would be a fascist perspective.
Right. So how do you determine at the end of the day? So what you're saying is the position that you're taking has to do with how you feel about this natural inclination. So what you're saying at the end of the day is using the natural inclination and whatever logical, rational route you use, you can arrive at these two different conclusions. You can be a Daniel Haqiqatju, you can be you can be someone else who's a complete divine command theory fundamentalist. So two things. I think you've tried to answer that, but I'm not exactly understanding. How do you determine which one is best for? Like, what's the criteria? Is it whatever is best for humanity because of the consequences? And how do you prevent the other so-called, bad conclusions if you think that it's so hard to convince them out of it once they're at that point that killing is the only solution?
Yeah. Okay. So the first question you said was, how do we arrive at like what is good? Did you say or something?
Yeah. So how do you pick and choose between those different routes? How do you arrive at
myself
yours?
and Daniel? You can just rationalize those. You can rationalize. We can clearly see that Daniel's society. We can see in the past the examples, like pre-enlightenment.
Like you and divine command theory, for example. How do you pick?
You can't. They're not rationalized, the axioms. So you can't. you can't pick and choose and say one is like, but with the word better can't even be used because you've arrived at your axioms without any kind of, you haven't used logic to arrive at those axiomatic beliefs. So I don't know.
So at the end of the day, they have as much claim to the truth as you do, is what you're saying.
In terms of their prescriptive statements, they are just as rational as mine if they are following divine command theory, which majority of people aren't. But if they admit to it, but in a debate, you wouldn't even have that. They would never debate you. For example, a Muslim would never debate you on divine command theory because you don't believe in the Quran. So he's not going to be convincing anyone on that. He will always debate you on your axioms. They will never debate you on their axioms unless
No,
you're
but
trying
I've seen that angle used. And they fall back on this presumption that Islam is self-evident and it is the truth, therefore divine command theory makes the most sense. But a lot of times in these debates, they seem to miss the point that Islam is not a self-evident truth, that there is no rational proof for it.
Yes.
Yeah, so not even like a good argument to make it the most likely answer at the moment. So yeah, I've seen that happen, but you're right. Like when falling back on rationality, there is no way for them to prove it. So yeah, it's often pointed the fingers at the secularist or atheist or whatever other label. Yeah, and that's partly why I haven't yet delved into these topics, is because first of all, I'm not qualified enough. I have so much reading that I'm still trying to do.
Same here. This is just, I'm on the very basics. Yeah.
It's interesting, and it's interesting to me that at the end of the discussion, you fall back. I mean, not in a bad way, but you concede that it still has to do with that natural inclination, and that both routes are rational and logical, but you're going to stick to the one with the natural inclination. So if someone has that natural inclination to have the other conclusion, are you overstepping their freedom by trying to force yours? Like in the example of killing them or silencing them and so on?
No, I don't think so. I think sometimes, for example, banning people off Twitter works, for example. People who have a following, or banning them from YouTube or any other social media. I think it works. And I would support banning people like even like Daniel Haqiqat, even someone who is on the same axiom as me, just because, he leads people towards that divine command theory, even though he might not believe in it himself, he leads people towards it. And therefore, I think it's appropriate to ban people like him, Muhammad Hijab, Ali Dawa.
Is that on a rational basis or that inclination that you're describing?
The conclusion is rational. The aim is subjective. So the starting point is subjective, but my conclusion by banning them will actually thingy the axiom. So it should help, with the axiomatic belief. Because I don't think anyone's going to support, or many people are going to support, Muslim preachers being banned. I mean, maybe some of the far right, some people will throw a hissy fit over that, but not with Muslim preachers. I think maybe a few Muslims here and there might say something, but it's not going to really gain any traction. So I don't think there's any issue with banning people like Muhammad Hijab and Daniel Haqiqat and people like that.
Right, but you're not falling on a rational reason for that. You're looking at the conclusions, right? The conclusion being that they're causing harm and they're not helping the well-being of people. So that's your measurement here, the well-being of people.
The well-being of people, that part is not rational, but banning them, that is a rational conclusion I've arrived at, which will maximize that well-being, that irrational axiomatic belief.
I think I agree with that. Not saying let's go and ban all Muslims off of the internet. That's obviously not what you're saying either. So let's clarify for the people who might use the soundbite somewhere else. But
yeah, Mufti Abu Layth is perfectly fine. I have no issues with him being online, because I think he is actually trying to maximize happiness. He does not. He's 100% does not follow divine command theory. He's closer to us than he is to say. So even someone like Daniel, who even believes, he wants to maximize happiness in his own weird way, but he's far closer to someone like people like us than he is to other people. There's many Muslims online.
I wouldn't even say whether they deserve to be banned or not has to do with how close they are to my mentality. Not even that. My measurement would be that there has to be an arbitrary. To be honest, it's difficult to determine where to draw that line. Like how much hateful sentiments do they have to spew before it's too much? And what does that hate mean, right? Because to some, saying that homosexuals are gross and they deserve to be tortured in the afterlife is not hate. It's divine command, right? So it's difficult to draw those lines. Yeah.
But it's advocating for homosexuals to be killed.
No, I know. Yeah, that's. But how do you know? Like, if someone says they deserve punishment and doesn't say we should kill them in this life, is that good? Like, sorry, not is that good? Does that qualify for the banning, for example?
Yeah, I would ban it.
You would.
No, to be honest, I think free speech is important because but this is TOS. This is a private company. I believe they should be able to do that out in public. They should be able to say those things, but and I don't think it should be the government that comes to attack these people. I want to limit the amount of governmental power.
Wait 1 second. So what's the public versus the public sphere online? What's the difference? Why is there a difference? Is it because the public sphere online gets you further?
Yeah, the public sphere online allows you to spread the message further, and plus it's you're using private companies to get to that position, whereas out in public you're just saying it, freely.
So what if those private companies want to maximize their profits, for example, and they do let those people on because it drives more views and it doesn't harm them, right?
Yes.
So if that's the case, then how do you rationalize banning them off of these platforms? Or you're saying if you had the platform, if you had any control, you would do it, is what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that if they have consistent terms of service and they're going to apply those consistently across the board, then they should be applying it to people like Daniel and Mohammed Hijab and Ali Dawa, when he says, in the perfect state, we should kill. And by the way, it's not just Muslims this applies to. I mean, this could apply to some ex-Muslims, for example.
Well, that's the thing. How do you can you give an example of a sentiment that some ex-Muslim repeated that is hateful or that will lead to that similar kind of harm as from the other side of the aisle?
There was one ex-Muslim who said something in the nature of I'm just trying to think. It's a few years ago now, I think. I think it was something to do with supporting far right people, and he said a statement like, I think he said, I can't remember off the top of my head. But I think
just to comment on that, it's funny that to find an example of something, from this side saying that kind of hateful sentiment, we have to think years back and think of one example or another.
I mean, you're fantastic, Apostate Aladdin. You're probably one of the best people online with regard to this by a mile. And but by the way, there's nothing wrong with going out aggressively against, especially Muslims who kind of spew hatred against others. There's nothing wrong with going hard against them, but I think ordinary, everyday Muslims shouldn't be blamed. And
no, I agree with you. The reason why, for example, I haven't really dug into the whole debate me, destroyed, debunked, that kind of stuff culture is it's just going to beget a lot more counterproductive interaction, and it's just going to make it worse for the people who already, for example, follow this channel. But I'm glad that some other people are doing it. Like, for example, people vilify AP when if he doesn't do this, if he doesn't go after these brazen da'wah people who straight up put hate speech on YouTube with no consequences, no one's going to do it for us. So I'm lucky enough to have this niche to focus on. And I do go brutally against, like in my dissecting apologetics live streams, for example, I go into every word that they say, and I have no shame in saying, for example, that's an idiotic thought and you're an idiot for saying it, because it's not merely a person holding an idiotic belief. This is a learned person. This is someone who thought about it and then is perpetuating it. So you should go brutal on da'wah people. especially that the conclusions that they have are going to harm not just you, but a lot of other people. So I think we agree on that.
100%. Yeah, go hard on the Dawa people. And I think you'd be brilliant in debates. I think, I like AP. I think because he's continually said that he doesn't want any harm towards Muslims. I might not agree with some of the guests he has on his channel. Especially one of the recent guys. I can't remember his name, but I think you'd be really good at debates. I think the thing is with debates, it just requires practice. The more practice you have, the better you become. And yeah, I think you'd be brilliant, and I think you'd inspire more Muslims or ex-Muslims to kind of come online and start talking and become good at debates and challenge these guys. I mean, look, let's go 5 years ago, 6 years ago. There was no one on the left. Like all of YouTube was pushing people towards the right, and then you had Vosh, and then you had Destiny. You had those two guys who pushed literally tens of thousands of people who had been pushed to the right, back to the center, back towards the center left, and we can do the exact same thing with regard to Muslims. Absolutely,
I agree. And it's funny. I'm getting two different sentiments here. Some people are like pious, saying no, Aladdin shouldn't debate. He should create an alternate brand. And then we need a debate between Aladdin and hijab. A couple of things I want to share. I mean, right now. So I don't think that's going to happen soon unless I really get roped into something and I'm like, you know what, screw it. This is a good topic that I feel strongly about, and this is a decent opponent. But for the time being, I'm not going to get into that because, first of all, I need to learn a lot more. I need to practice more.
yes,
And I need to find the right topics to debate, because some people would say, why don't you debate whether apostate should be executed or not? And I'm like, no, F you. Like, that's not something to be debated. Like, we shouldn't get pedantic and start from the absolute bottom. Why do I deserve to live? No. But some topics I feel like should be debated because, like, for example, the idea that hijab is good for the woman, right?
yes.
I could debate in length about that, and I will at some point. So, yeah. But I appreciate your words and ideas, and
It's my pleasure.
I still need to think a little bit more about what you said earlier about axioms and the rationality of divine command theory, but I'm definitely not the qualified person to give you a conclusions because I haven't had them yet.
I'm not as well. But I think it's worth looking into, just so that at least we are consistent with that. Whenever we come to conclusions, we are consistent with our original axiomatic perspective. So it just helps us in debate, because I've seen, like, I know Daniel's a good debater. Let's be honest, like, as much as I dislike his conclusions, he did fairly well against the two ex-Muslims he came up against. But look at him against Destiny. He got destroyed. He got absolutely knocked out of the park. And
really,
I think we can do that as well. I think ex-Muslims can do that as well, without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I watched his video, and his for example, I commented on his debate with Sabreen, and I never said he's a bad debater, because I mean, yeah, he's got bad manners and all that,
Yes.
but he easily won that debate, whether he is right or wrong. That's the thing about debates. You could be absolutely wrong and you could win the debate, right? Because it's a skill. It's about how you not only manipulate the audience and the people watching, but the person in front of you as well. How how you trick them, how do you get one over them, and so on. So yeah, anyway,
no, thank you very much for having me on the show. And if you're an ex-Muslim and you become good at debates, become good at this thing, and then do it, don't just go in there and then in front of millions of people and then kind of look bad, which I think has happened slightly in the past. But I think
and it will continue happening, right?
Yeah,
like people
absolutely.
Always on both sides of the aisle. The problem is, once an ex-Muslim is embarrassed on screen, even if it's not a content creator, it could be just some random who called into a channel, they will use that clip. Like, I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Like a conversation like this, for example, I've had conversations with Muslims on this show and others where it's absolutely embarrassing for them. Yet I didn't take the clip out and be like, Muslim destroyed by atheist and all that dumb stuff. So I just wanted to point that out, that it does happen in huge numbers on the other side of the aisle, that a Muslim would say something that is absolutely wrong or get destroyed in a debate, but they highlight our faults. So yeah, if you're going to be in the public sphere, try to prepare for it, I suppose.
Yeah. No, thank you very much for having me on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Take care.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye. So we got a couple of callers in the back. A Christian who wants to prove that... oh, okay. Friendly Muslim had a question. He was saying, who would he kill? Please explain before he goes, or I can ask him. So the caller, Sohaib, can you please answer in the comments to answer that question? So who would he kill? I think he was talking about someone with who took the axiomatic route of divine command theory and has conclusions that are harmful to people and is, indoctrinating people into that mentality. And there's no way to stop their speech that is not productive. I didn't agree with that, but that's a talk for another day. I'll address a couple of comments and then I'll get to the callers. Let's see. So I just found it funny that people have already created accounts. There's like the Aladdin's mask, and then there's a top green leaf on that plant behind Aladdin. Which one? There's so many of them. It's open to interpretation, I guess. But yeah, thank you for your comment. I don't think social media platforms are going to be able to ban every single account, but I think there should be consistency. So I've been kicked off of TikTok multiple times, and I don't even know if I'm going to bother appealing it this last time, because the whole, like, you can't ban masses of people who mass report me incorrectly. There's nothing I could do about that, and TikTok is always going to side with them. So there's almost no point in that fight because I'm only one person. I think other people should undertake that. But point is, yeah, they can't ban everybody, but you should still report the people. Like if you see a commenter saying something so brazen, just report them. They might get banned, they might not, but do your part, I suppose. But yeah, thanks for the comment. I'll read a couple more comments. So we got a friendly Muslim who's been on the channel before, and we have Mr. I can't pronounce that name, but a Christian who wants to prove Christianity. So I'll have the Christian first because friendly ex-Muslim, we've spoken before, and you had just joined. The other person has been waiting, so that would be a very interesting conversation to have. Let's read a couple of comments first. Well, thank you, Mischa Hector says, the goal is not to embarrass people, it's to build bridges, and you, Apostate, do a good job of it. I try. And to be clear, there are people in the public sphere, not callers, but people who are preaching, I think deserve to be embarrassed. And I will not shy away from that. At some point, I will just personally go after them and their ideas. I mean, not by them, I mean their whole brand, their ideas, not their personal life. But at the moment, I'm trying to focus on my own ideas as well. So I'm doing a balance between both. Okay, a couple more comments. You know what? Let's... Interesting. KCA says, greetings, Apostle Aladdin. Hope you're well. Seems maybe you've had a tough week. What gave it away? Seriously, though, do I look like I've had a tough week? You suck. Who told you? No, I'm just kidding. All right, so I'm taking our Christian caller, and please tell me how to pronounce your name. I do not speak that language. Taking you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
How you doing, man? My name is Monsieur Delicieux in French.
Delicieux. Is that delicious?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
So it is my understanding that you're an atheist, right?
Yes, in the sense that I don't believe in all of these. I believe that all these definitions of God are man-made. I don't know what else is out there. Yeah.
So for me to engage with this topic with you, I'd just like to set the scene. What is your understanding of truth?
That's a very vague question.
What about objective truth?
So let's define it this way. If it's objective truth, for the time being at least, it'll stand to any scrutiny, right? And it can't be disproven by any scrutiny. I don't know how much more precise we can get at the moment.
Okay, perfect. I like that definition. Yeah. So how about this? I'll give you the biblical definition of truth, and I'd like to see how you engage in relation to two propositions where I believe demonstrate Jesus is Lord over all people. Scripture says in John 17:17, the word of God is truth. So that's a claim. But it stipulates also in Colossians 1, Hebrews 1:3, that every everything. I'm sorry. Are you there?
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. Everything is sustained or submitted to the word of God. So we got John 17:17 saying the word of God is truth. And it says in Hebrews 1:3, everyone is submitted by the power of his word. So if I'm able to demonstrate that everyone is submitted to the power of his word, then I can objectively demonstrate that Christianity is true. So I'm going to do that by propositions.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? If you can demonstrate what?
Demonstrate that everyone is submitted to the power of his word in scripture. I would have demonstrated that he has power over you, and by that, demonstrating that scripture is from God.
What does submitted to his power mean?
Basically, he says something, and everybody's doing it against their own will.
But how many of those things do you have to demonstrate?
Only one.
Only one.
Because
how is that enough?
Because it's exclusive to himself, so nobody else could do that, unless you have an example where somebody has submitted the world universally.
No, here's the thing. Like, I can think of something where I say, I can capitalize on something that's human nature, and I say, I am God, and I say that you're going to do this against your own will, and that's just one example. Would that prove that I am God?
But it's not human nature. I'm going to give something that's not something that is not something that you can find in nature. It's something that is out the blue, basically. So it's not something that you can relegate to human nature, or something that is something that has no bearing on nature or the reality we live in. Besides,
so I'm gonna hear it out, and then we're gonna revisit like your opening statement of how this proves God.
Okay.
So let's take it bit by bit. So go ahead and tell me what that thing is.
Okay, so we have two propositions. The first proposition is authorship, saying that the God of the Hebrews makes exclusive claims to the 7-day cycle, 7-day week.
How is that claim phrased?
Well, basically, in the Hebrew scriptures, it makes it clear that he created the world in 7 days, and he Sabbath on the seventh, and he made that a sign that he is Lord, as per Ezekiel 20:12, Ezekiel 20:20, saying, "This is the sign, the 7-day week and the Sabbath, that I am Lord." And that
Wait, does he say in that statement that it's a 7-day week, or God created the world in 7 days?
No, well, in Genesis 1, it makes clear it's a 7-day week. And then as you move along, you see the progression. Every single time he says, "This is my sign."
Wait, how does it phrase the 7-day week? I'm curious.
It says on the first day he created, in the beginning he created the heavens and the earth. And then he said, "Let the light be." And he separated light from darkness. And this was the first day. And then the second day, the third day.
No, but where does it define it being called a week or a unit of measurement?
Well, it doesn't use the word week, but what it does is stipulate 7 days, and that's a recurrent cycle throughout scripture. So basically he says, every Sabbath will you come and worship me. So basically, and he says, that's my sign. So if you're going from Genesis 1 and we move along in the progression, you see that every Sabbath, everyone who is a child of God is to worship him on that 7th day. So basically referring to a 7-day cycle.
So you're saying I can't verify any of these verses, but I'm just going to go by. No, it's not that I disbelieve you, but I'm just making a claim, like making a statement here. So presuming that all of that is true, I don't know much about the history of how we started recording time, or which, like, for example, we go by, like Muslims go by the Hijri calendar, or they might go by the Hijri calendar. How does that prove in any way that it's God? So in your case, you're saying God dictated the 7-day week. Then how does humanity adhering to one of those time systems mean that it is God?
Well, that was only my first proposition, authorship, because I was responding to your question. So I brought the authorship to demonstrate that it is exclusive to the God of the Hebrews. My second proposition is the one that demonstrates power over all nations, sovereignty, by the fact that he predicted the universal submission of the world to a 7-day cycle as a demonstration of his power over all nations.
And so was the 7-day cycle not present before that?
No.
Was it not present in any calendar?
No, let me explain to you. So a little caveat: every nation kept a different cycle for the veneration of their gods. 2,000 years ago, only one nation kept the 7-day cycle. Jesus Christ reaffirmed the prophecy of Isaiah 66:23 when he said, "I am the Lord of the Sabbath." So wherever there's the 7-day cycle, which is associated to the Sabbath, there is the sphere of his influence. So as he stated that as he proclaimed that statement, and in fulfillment of Isaiah 66:23, we see from the day he proclaimed it, we saw the domino effect all the way to the USSR in the 1940s, which was submitted to a 7-day cycle as well. So,
well, like I got a couple of questions about that. So, had there been another system, right, that's not the 7-day cycle, and again, if I'm glossing over a point or another, it's not that I'm conceding, but I'm trying to focus on different angles here. So had the I don't know, 8-day system or something else, had it been the prevalent one, would you take this 7-day what you're claiming? Would you look at it and think, therefore, the God of Christianity is false?
Yes.
You would have, just
Yes.
because there's. So, do you not see anything else in the Bible that isn't exactly adhering to the world that we're in today, and you see it and you think this proves Christianity false?
You can bring if you have an objection, please bring it up. Again, every prophecy in Scripture is 100% accurate. I give you one example, and this is the number one example because this was the one that demonstrated that Jesus is still alive in heaven.
Wait, is it made as a direct prophecy? I'm curious also, and
Yes,
is it made as a prophecy that, and therefore everyone's going to follow the 7-day cycle?
Yes, Isaiah 66:23 makes that clear. Isaiah 63, 66, 19, and 23 makes it clear. I could elaborate some more, but it should make it clear because it says, "From Sabbath to Sabbath will all nations come to worship me." He says he leaves his sign in verse 19 amongst the nations. The sign, as per Ezekiel 20:12, Ezekiel 20:20, is the Sabbath. So he says he will leave his sign, the Sabbath, which is directly linked to the 7-day cycle, amongst the nations, so that his scattered the scattered 10 tribes of Israel who are amongst the nations could keep his Sabbath. For them to do that, they have to be the nations in which
let me offer a different interpretation.
They must adhere to a 7-day cycle. So he
had. What if here the interpretation is that people are going to be praying to me on Sundays or like every 7 days, like in many different parts of the world, and that is my sign that people will be Christian in many parts of the world?
Okay, it doesn't say that. It doesn't speak about Sunday. Sunday has nothing to do with the
Sorry,
Sabbath.
I mean like the Sabbath or whatever. What if the meaning of this verse, right, is that people will be praying to me on my day everywhere in the world, and that's my sign?
Well, he says from Sabbath to Sabbath, so he's talking about a cycle. So again, 7-day cycle. And as soon as you mention Sabbath, you're mentioning a 7-day cycle. It's automatic. You cannot remove the Sabbath from the 7-day cycle.
Here's a good question. How were their days before the sun?
Well, it says in Genesis 1, "Let the light be," and the light in this context is the Son of God. And it says in Isaiah 66, the same chapter that I brought you in Isaiah 66:23, "He will be the light." So he will be the light of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem will not have any daytime. It will always be shined by the light of God. So
how do you measure a day? Was it 24 hours?
He calculated to measure to a 24 day hour. It's not problematic.
So before there was light. He measured like multiples of 24, and that's how he figured out how long it took.
Yeah, I'm giving you. I wasn't there, and it's not really problematic. But I'm telling you, there's some leeway for you to come to that understanding without finding a contradiction between the first day and the fourth day. I just came on top of my head right there. So there's probably different solutions to that problem.
So here's the thing: if there's multiple solutions to that problem, you're trying to find something that fits rather than finding what the truth is?
No,
right?
no. I'm giving you something that is reasonable to account for this so-called contradiction, but it's not problematic for me because this is not a prophecy to begin with. I'm being give again. My proposition was based on the fact that the truth is something that submits you. So I provided you an example where you are submitted. The world is submitted universally. So that is what you need to address. As far as trying to find some contradiction in Scripture, I will give you some responses according to what I know. But whether there are multiple solutions to one problem does not negate the fact that you are submitted to Jesus Christ. That is the
here's what I want to understand. So, as everybody's already said in the comments, the 7-day cycle has already been there since before Christianity, right? So, him saying, right, if these verses mean that people will be praying to me every week, that's not a prediction that the week will continue to be used as it already was used, but a prediction or just a statement that people will continue to pray to me, and that demonstrates my power.
Let me give a quick history lesson. I don't want to go further than 2,000 years ago. I'm going to go 2,000 years ago. Okay. Specifically 2,000 years ago, there was only one nation that kept the 7-day cycle. That was Israel. That's easily
I don't know if I can confirm or deny that, but
that's easily verified. That's easily verified. Secondly, the 7-day cycle predates Rome, because I'm sure when you say Christian, I don't believe Rome was a Christian country, but it predates the Christianity of Rome, because the Julian calendar had the 7-day, adopted the 7-day calendar with the 8-day calendar that the Romans were keeping for the veneration of their gods. So we see the 7-day cycle was already influencing the empire before it became so-called Christianity. And thirdly, Rome has not conquered the world because the Gregorian calendar is not universal. As per Iran and Ethiopia does not keep the Gregorian calendar. So Rome cannot be the agency that accounts for why the 7-day cycle is universal. So for these 3 points I just enumerated, the Rome angle and the human agency angle is out the window. But again, 2,000 years ago, only one nation kept the 7-day cycle, and we saw the domino effect from Israel being a small nation affecting the whole world, and as God predicted in His scripture.
Okay, well, I'm not going to argue this further. Whether everybody in the chat keeps saying that a lot of this is wrong, but let's just concede
I know the KCA guy. It's easy to say that it's been disproved, but it's harder to demonstrate. Like, it's easy to say it's been disproved.
Well, I'll bring it back to one point before I move on to the next caller. So, like I said before, this is not an explicit prediction that says, even if it were, that's still like one of many prophecies, as Islam claims to have prophecies. But had this,
there's no. Let me make it clear.
Right. Anyway, like that's not my point. But let's presume that this there was another weak system. I guarantee you wouldn't have looked at that verse and thought that disproves my Christianity.
I agree, and if that was the case, then Christianity I would have to throw my Bible in the garbage, because this is the number one proof that God says He is God.
So when in your like belief process did you arrive at that proof? Like, how did it go for you?
It's a long process, but I was brought up when I was 20, 21. I was brought to a 7-day Adventist church. They started talking to me about the Sabbath, and then I rebelled against God. Then He started manifesting Himself in my life, protecting me, doing a whole bunch of miracles in the sight of all men, so people believed as well. And then the Sabbath was coming up, and I started listening to Hebrew Messianic Jews, and they were talking about the Sabbath, and I was like, the Sabbath. And then I started, out of nowhere, through meditation of His word, I started reading, and I started seeing things like nobody else was expressing. For example, how God says the Sabbath is His sign, and the word sign means proof, demonstration. So I was like, His signature. So I was like, the sign, okay, creation, 7-day cycle, Sabbath is His sign. So this is the signature that He is God over creation. And then I started reading, and all the information came to me, as He says He would do with His children. He would inspire them with the knowledge of truth. So that's
I appreciate you sharing that avenue to arrive at faith.
I try to make it a short story, but it's a longer story than that. But go ahead.
I appreciate you sharing this. I know a lot of people aren't going to be convinced by it, but the point is not to convince me, but to give me your reasoning, and you have done that. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Thank you very much. Just before I let go, I've it's not the first time I have addressed people with this information. Until you have not been able to adequately respond to this argument, which is easily, you can verify this information easily, like 2,000 years ago, only one nation. If you're not able to easily to refute it, then I have demonstrated Jesus is sovereign over all people. And now you have to deal with all the other things that He said. When He comes back, He's going to judge the earth, and those who have rebelled against Him are going to get what they deserve. So thank you very much for your time. And
wait, but before you go, I do want to clarify there. So do you think if I am, let's say that I am unable to refute this argument, so-called argument, though to be honest, I view it like I view a lot of other fallacious arguments that, anyway, the point isn't that. So let's say I disagree with you and you say that you've done your job, right? And 80 people are watching right now and more people are going to be watching. You've done your job. And if someone can't refute it, that means that they deserve to go to hell because they've seen the truth.
No. It's not because they can't refute my argument that they'll be facing God. All I'm saying is in God's hand. All I know is I have never met anybody who has not been convicted of the reality of my presentation. Now, they might deny it, or they might reject it, or they might rebel against it, and then the consequences that come with that. But if you're not able to, and to suggest that my argument is like the rest, I'm sure you can respond to different arguments that have been presented to you. For example, when you said Islam has prophecies, not one prophecy from any group of people that is.
No, I'm not concerned with that at the moment, but
that has universal implication, as I have presented to you. So there's only one, and I just presented it to you. So the fact still remains is that you have to deal with that. You have to look yourself in the mirror.
Okay.
And you have to say, hey, this guy with this beard, what did he say? I need to verify this, which is easy to verify, and I need to address it, or else.
Okay.
Everything else that's in scripture, I would have to deal with, and that's justice.
Well, okay, we have to agree to disagree there, but yeah, thank you for calling.
Thank you,
and have a good day.
You too.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I heard something that struck me as very familiar. The part about, it's your job to look into this at the moment and realize that this is the reality and the truth, and then the consequences are, that what God promised. And I've heard that a lot of times before in other religions, so I'll just leave it at that. So to take the next caller, Muslim with an attitude, and he clarified in the chat, he mean he has an attitude, he's just quoting like Ice Cube, and I'm not going to say the N-word. But anyway, adding him in 3, 2, 1. Hey Muslim, how's it going?
Am I in?
Yes, you're in.
Hello. Great. How's it going now? How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm just literally here to clarify that I am not Smiles Mando. That's it, really. I'm not him.
Oh wait, are you the guy with another account? The don't forget the leader.
Yeah. I just want to clarify. Yeah, I'm not him. Obviously he has no problems. You guys have your problems with him, but obviously I'm not him. I just want to clarify that.
All right. Well, thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah, that's included. And obviously, per topic, I believe in God because obviously I don't know. Sorry, I'm nervous. I've never been live.
No need to be. Don't worry.
It's obviously the first step. So I believe in God because Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the prophets. I believe in the Abrahamic narrative, and I don't know how else to summarize it. I believe the messengers gave revelation, and it summarized Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and he clarified the previous prophets. And I just believe in God in general. I can go into philosophy and all this kind of stuff, but I think it's irrelevant. Me reading philosophy taught me that I don't really need philosophy. I can just believe in God. I can quote the cosmological argument, all these arguments, but I believe the Quran.
Let's just concede God exists and so on. If you can say it concisely, why do you believe that Islam is the truth?
Why do I believe Islam is the truth? Okay, right. Okay. So why? Okay. The premise. So it's okay. I'm trying to establish that Islam's truth.
What's that? Sorry.
Compared
to
what? Yeah, what do we do? In my head, I'm trying to think what we define as truth. Truth, like when you say truth, what do you mean?
So
is Islam a religion? Is Islam a religion? Are you trying to say that Islam exists? Because then it's truth that exists. But what are you trying to say? Is it true in what sense?
So is it true that how do you know for sure, that Muhammad was the messenger of Allah and that the description of Allah is what actually that God that you believe in is?
Well, I could break that simply. So 2 questions. You asked, how do I know Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was a prophet? And he gave. So what was the question?
Yeah, how do you know, like the statement? What does it mean to be a Muslim, right? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is His messenger. So how do you know for sure, how are you certain that Muhammad is the messenger? And also, how are you certain that everything in Islam, like at least the Quran, is from the God?
Is it okay if I deal with one question? Because if we juggle two questions, it just goes all over the place. I'd rather not straw man. I'd rather be on the point. So I believe was the question that Muhammad was. Okay. I believe he gave the truth. Sorry, what was the question again? So how do I know he's speaking the truth? How do I know he's speaking the truth?
Yeah, how do you know that he is the messenger of God?
Okay, testimony.
Testimony.
Simple.
Meaning,
testimony.
What does that mean?
Hadith, Sahabas, the hadiths, they documented what he did, what was it within his day-to-day life, his miracles, all that kind of stuff. And to think about it, I read a lot of history, like a crap load of history, and 600 AD isn't that far behind. And if we know basic things from like thousands of years ago, we know that Caesar crossed into Gaul. We know he came back and he had a disagreement with the Senate. We know he got stabbed to death by 65 people. We know that from 2,000 years ago, conclusively. But 600 AD, there's a lot of things he did that were supernatural. We can only come to a couple of conclusions. He was a magician. The people around him were lying, or three. What was it? What's the third one? I'll think of it later. But we can come to a conclusion that he's a liar. The people around were liars. Even his enemies were liars. His Sahaba.
Wait, do we have documentation? Do we have documentation from his so-called enemies, for example? Because we hear stories about then the enemy saw a miracle and then they still didn't join Islam and so on. But do we have documentation from those people? Do we have sources from Quraysh, for example?
That's a good point. That is a very good point. If there was obviously detractors, there would be missives and treaties counteracting what Muhammad was saying. There was a lot, and the thing is, there was a lot of detractors, but no one was opposed the miracles of the moon.
Wait, 1 second. You're saying there is no historical record of people denying it, therefore it is true?
That's not my point. But my point is, if there was, your point was before that. Okay, where were the people? Where are distractors? There were no detractors. Sorry, there were in terms of miracles. I've lost my train of thought. Can you reverse 5? So your point was.
So you mentioned how. I asked about the historical record from other sources, the sources that, for example, because I hear this point a lot that even his enemies thought he was a Sadiq al-Amin and so on, but that's all the narration of Muslims, right?
Yeah, but that's the point. Like in that time, there was a lot of detractors. As you were aware as well, there was apostasy. There were people that are against Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If there was a lot of complaints about Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he did this and that, but no one doubted his miracles. No one did. People had a lot to complain about him.
What you're saying,
especially the Jews and Christians who got to leave the Mecca, Arabia.
You're saying no one complained because we don't have record of them complaining?
No one complained.
No, you're saying that's the conclusion because we don't have record.
But that's how we judge history, though, isn't it? Like that's how we judge history. Like that's how we judge history. Like people complained.
No, I want to simplify it to a certain point here, which is the point that you're getting at is that the absence of historical records that say that people called him a liar or complained and so on means that nobody did.
No, that's 2 different points. There's 2 different points. Me and you are full aware that people did call him a liar and people did complain about him, their records and testimony. But the point is, there's actual testimony that he committed the miracles, and there was no one to say against that he didn't do the miracles. That's my point.
So your point is not that they called him a liar and so on. So the point, to reiterate what you said, is he did miracles, and nobody said he didn't. Like there is no record from opposing sources to say no, he didn't do a miracle. That's what proves that he did do the miracle.
Yeah, I can say that. But I know we're trying to get it, but we cannot apply it to anything. So just say, if there was no one to say Julius Caesar got stabbed 65 times, does that mean that conclusive that he did? Conclusive that he got stabbed 65 times in the Senate? Could we say that? Or anything else that ever happened?
Yeah, so
sorry, I'm caffeined up.
Yeah,
I'm very caffeined up.
that's okay. To get to what I'm trying to ask about here. So, for example, there were a lot of mushafs that were you would say, for example, I would presume that you would say they were wrong copies or like not correct, so that's why they were burned at some point, and those disappeared. So that's proof of something having existed, but it was removed. So if there were records by Quraysh or whatever saying, remember when he said he did this, he actually didn't do it, they could have been destroyed. Or even maybe people didn't care enough to write it down. What's that?
But is it speculation or actual fact?
No, is it an actual fact that nobody wrote down anything that said that he was a liar, or is it speculation?
Well, until we find it, no. Until we find it, no.
But
also, there would be some.
We already know that like throughout history, records are lost. So just to say that there were no records by the enemy, history is written by the victors. We already know that. So we know that there were other instances of that happening, right?
Yeah, but we're not talking about a singular person. We're not talking about a tribal leader, a small tribe leader who conquers another tribe, destroys all information and history he's written it. We're talking about Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, a massive figure with massive influence, a well-known person, his influence spread around. If there was an inkling of anything, it would be there. It doesn't lie. Like history. I read a lot of history.
Here's the thing. Like
there's always something.
Think of this example. If it's a tribe Wait, I'm hearing my echo. Let me mute you for just
sorry.
Let me mute you for just a second, and then I'll unmute you just so I don't hear my voice. So say there's another tribe, right? That these hadiths, for example, were written a long time after he died. So if someone said in one of those hadiths a miracle that Muhammad himself didn't claim, right? Like the splitting of the moon, the Quran says, a lot of people argue that means it didn't split yet, but when the hour is near, that's when it's going to split. And then there are hadith about him actually splitting it. So if you're another tribe who's non-Muslim and you hear that somebody claims that he split the moon, like or that a guy who lived 200 years ago split the moon, why would you bother to go write down and say, by the way, there's this guy that makes a claim, I didn't see it, therefore he didn't do it? It doesn't exactly follow that he did split the moon, otherwise we would see papers that say he didn't, Sorry.
Okay, but I don't want to take too long because I shafted the other guy because I said I'd be 2 minutes, but I think I've been a lot longer. So basically, that's based on false premises. You're coming to the assumption that it was written down. What was it, like 200 years afterwards? It wasn't a case. I think he's gone. Right. So it was written at the time. However, there's a chain narration that we can testify that these people.
I'm not saying this is true or not.
I've lost my train of thought because I read the comment, but we know there's a chain narration that goes down. And how do we even define what is true or not? It's testament, right? We define by the reliability of the person. So if you're doing a university course, if we were to quote someone, we would use that as a backing. We'd test the credibility, the biases, and all these kind of factors. The same with hadiths. We judge the hadiths by the factors that we judge them cross-referencing at the moment. So I think it's solid. I know it's solid. We know it's solid objectively because there's a chain narration. We can argue, what was your argument that it's 200 years, but we know for a fact there's a chain narration that was written, but however, it was compiled all together in one compendium later. That's what we know for certain. Sorry if I'm talking fast.
That's okay, and I'm just muting you because of the echo. Okay, yeah. So the point was to try to understand what makes you believe, and in your case, your belief is fueled by basically testimonies. What you said, that other people have said that he has done miracles, and if we're talking about simply the scope of you believe that he's a prophet or the prophet from God, because other people saw him do miracles, and those people wrote it down, and there weren't records of people saying, no, he's lying, he didn't do the miracle. Is that an accurate summation? You can unmute. You've muted yourself. You can unmute now.
Sorry. Yeah. So basically, yes, that I'm basing my worldview on testimony like everybody else does. You base your worldview on testimony. I do. The people who write university books, to write anything, they base their views on testimony. We can't do anything individually. So we have to get outside sources that we deem credible. I deem Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam credible, so that's why I get my worldview from him. And I deem the chain narration credible and the Quran credible due to Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's miracles, such as splitting them in muted. Also, other miracles that was observed by thousands of people. If those miracles had a shred of doubt, there'll be a lot of detractors. And you could argue, they may be burnt or whatever. But as you know, there was a lot of strife in the Muslim world. There was apostasy wars. there was a lot of people who didn't like Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and if there was any rumors about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it would caught like wildfire. It'd be all over the place because they'd want the Jews especially want to discredit Muhammad.
I can think of one instance. Sorry, I'm going to mute you again. One instance where Muhammad was accused of stealing a piece of cloth, and then a verse came down to say that no, he didn't steal it. And it's weird because he's Sadiq al-Amin. You'd think that kind of rumor wouldn't catch on at all, but God had to intervene and mention that it's not true. But to your point earlier about, for example, and I know you need to leave, so I'm going to let you go after this. If thousands of people saw a miracle, for example, right? Where is the record that thousands of people saw a miracle? It would be like one or two people narrating that they talked to other people a generation ago, who spoke to other people a generation ago, or even wrote it down that thousands of people saw it. It's not that we know for a fact that thousands of people saw it and they didn't write down that they object. And even writing down wasn't as common of a thing as now. Like in today's world, if somebody said, if 1,000 people saw a miracle, they tweet about it right away. But so the absence of somebody saying, no, that's not a miracle, especially years and years after the so-called thousands have seen it, doesn't follow in my head. But again, the point is to understand what makes you believe. So I appreciate you giving us the answer.
Fair enough. And I know, obviously, that other person was supposed to go before me. I want to make last point. You mentioned basically how about the cloth stuff. That wasn't an existential threat to Islam or Prophet. That wasn't denying his the prophethood. And something like splitting the moon or committing these miracles are direct, like the heart to believe, and also it would cause an existential threat in the Islam community, and also it would also help break down the credibility of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we could argue that yes, if it was false, or there was an inkling of ambiguity, it would catch on Wi-Fi, and I stand by that because stealing of a cloth is an existential threat. It may cause it may help embarrass Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it doesn't really is not a black and white contradiction as like a Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam splitting the moon in half or not. Because if he didn't split the moon in half, he'd be called a liar and a catch on that Wi-Fi. Wouldn't it?
I mean, okay. Sorry, 1 second. I have more to think about that, but anyway, because I got to let you go, I'll just give you the example to think about, and maybe in a future call we can discuss that one as well, if I can remember it, because I already forgot. But there was a hadith of the Prophet giving some advice about agriculture, like you're supposed to do this to the palm trees, and then it didn't work. And then he said, well, I'm not a farmer, or something to that effect. In that case, how do you not interpret that as some kind of prophecy that came wrong or something like that? But anyway, there's a lot more ambiguity to it, and we can have a back and forth about that another time because you got to go. But again, I appreciate you calling in.
Yeah, thank you for the call. I'm not going to respond because obviously the other guy has been waiting for quite a bit of time. But lastly, I am not Smiles Monday. I just want to clarify that. But nice to talk to you, El. Have a great day, and Ramadan Mubarak. Khuda Hafiz.
Sorry, I meant to mute myself first. Have a great day. Okay, I will have Friendly Muslim join in a second. There was a question on my mind that, damn it, I should have written it down. Question on my mind about all of that. Give me a second, chat. Sorry, 1 second. I'm kind of blanking out right now. So what were we talking about? We were talking about the cloth, and the revelation about that. We were talking about the palm trees. And before that, what were we talking about? The lack of record saying that wasn't seen and so on. Okay, if I remember it again, I will mention that. But I suppose it's testimony leading to belief. That is what oh God. Anyway, I'll take Friendly Muslim in 3 seconds, and then I'll get back to that if I remember. So Friendly Muslim, 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it? Good, you?
Yeah, I feel like there's been a lot of information unraveled and unpacked within the space of an hour while I was waiting. I was like, I feel like it's been a busy week. Like in the whole Dawah scene, I feel like we've been through a lot this week. Yeah. In general. Oh, the pollen tree. I mean, just while it's on my mind, and Abu Laith did a thing on this, and so he was kind of like, people often misunderstood the Prophet, peace be upon him, when he was just giving his own opinion and they just took it as like revelation. And the way he's like, yeah, I just gave my opinion. I didn't expect that, you know. And but they were like, you're the prophet of God, and you know. And he's like, yeah, but I just gave you my opinion that I didn't like it. It didn't mean like, you know, I knew what's going on. So again, he does give some examples of things which kind of has educated me on really looking at hadith differently in some cases, and being like, was he just having a regular conversation? But because he was the prophet of God, they write it down. Yeah, and so I've kind of, those are things I'm pondering on for sure, you know. And so when I'm reading different things, I'm like, all right, he did have a sense of humor, but because it's written in a hadith and people are dissecting these things, he might have just been a normal guy saying, yo, cool, all right, I didn't know. Like, it's fine, like, you know, my bad.
You know what? That makes me think of an example. If I'm given like you know, on a chat or something, somebody's asking me, I would maybe have a political opinion. I'd say, look, okay, this is not a well-formed opinion. This is not me as Aladdin speaking. So I would have hoped that Muhammad would have given us disclaimers like these. Like, this is not a prophetic disclaimer. I mean, this is not a prophetic statement, but oh well, that's an interesting interpretation of it.
Yeah. Maybe there are. I mean, that even. I shouldn't even bring this up. No, I won't. I won't bring it up. Yeah, but there was another incident. There was another incident where, you know, maybe you. Okay, look. So all right. Allah forgive me. Listen. So what happened was, you know, there's that one where the servant girl, she mistakes the container. Basically, she thought it was water, but he actually, yeah. So like he was. I'm pretty sure he wasn't like. I think he was being kind and being like, okay, well, you know, it's the prophet's kind of peace be upon him. So, you know, you're blessed and you won't get a fever, or, you know, you'll be all right kind of thing. But he does say, like, why did you do that? I didn't tell, why have you done that? You know, so some things are, I do look at him as just a human being. And when he was in human being mode and a man dealing with situations and sort of separating them from actual revelation. So again, that's something we're still pondering over.
So in that situation, he was like just softening the blow for her, like she's already done it. So he's like, you know what?
Like, yeah, don't
Here's
feel
a freebie.
bad.
Yeah,
it's from the prophet, you know, peace and blessings be upon him, because people were that obsessed with him at points where they were like, I just read a hadith where he was sleeping and someone took he was sweating and a woman's come in and she's taking his sweat. You know, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's like, you know, it's a blessing for our children. And he's like, oh, okay, then, for sure. You know, like, all right, cool. Like, I don't want you to feel bad. So I do see our prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, as a man in some points also, which is part of the pondering and knowledge and, you know, the further dialogue. Which
that's very interesting. I mean, that's like she was fangirling, I suppose, and he was like, "Okay, that's weird, but you know,
yeah, cool, all right, well, bless you, fine." Like he was very like, "Don't bow to me, like, what are you doing?" You know, and but people loved him. And sometimes when I see like celebrities now, and we've got a lock of his hair, and it's on eBay for like 15. I'm like, well, it's not impossible that he went through the same sort of stuff. You know, where it's like, well, it's from the prophet.
I would have appreciated it if he recognized his power. And I know we believe different things. You believe that he's a prophet. I don't believe that. But I think if he knew that he was a prophet and people were going to take it that seriously, like 1,000+ years later, I think he would have to say something like, by the way, like what you're doing is very close to idolizing me, right? I'm not an extension of God. I'm just a human, you know, made of flesh and blood. So I feel like I hope he would have put more emphasis on how his sweat is not holy, but he kind of just said,
maybe
okay.
There's a hadith and you know they cut that bit out, or they didn't they didn't remember his disclaimer, like, you know. But again, it is shirk if we kind of put him on that level. But that's another story.
Oh well.
What else was there to deal with? Oh, the moon splitting. Oh yeah, that was another situation. I'll touch it very, very quickly. So there were,
and after that, I want you to tell me, what is it? Why do you believe that Islam is
the moon splitting? There were people that were not Muslims that did witness it, and there is an argument, and you're right, that some people say that it won't split until the end of times. There is the Indian king who did have a vision, which, you know, we take as proof that, okay, fine, he saw it, and there's a chain of evidence that supports it. So again, whether you take it, you don't take it, you know, that's how people.
Wait, what was the source that the non-Muslims saw it as well?
I think
what is the source of that information? Yeah.
I don't know offhand. Sheikh Uthman, and may Allah bless him that he's back on his feet. He did his video and he goes through the sources. So I think he mentions it in there. So that's where I'm sort of getting it from.
And like a hadith source or seerah source or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so, just to highlight, that still falls under the same issue of, a Muslim said that a non-Muslim saw it. You know what I mean?
True. I think it would be how important it is to your overall belief system. Whether, him spitting of the moon makes it, divine or not, or whether there's further information to be presented to us.
Is it at the core of your belief?
No.
Okay.
I can accept that. I can accept that there was a vision from a king, and someone saw a vision of the moon splitting, and I can accept that. I can also accept that there is further studies on the moon to still be compiled. I do look into sort of UFO alien sort of arguments and things of that nature, and there is an argument that the moon is hollow and is splittable. So, and there's also arguments that there are bases on the moon also. So
I mean, well, here's the thing. If it was hollow, then the mass of it would be a lot different, and it would affect tides in a different way. And even if it was split, right? If we moved the moon that way, then it's going to affect the tides. And there's a lot more to it than that, I think.
I personally, I'm on a wait and see list on that one until we start going there, because I mean, there are some governments that have access to information that is 50, 60, 70 years ahead of our understanding, which has been well documented. So I can leave that there. Right, fine. There are certain things that may still need to be explained and investigated.
Well, I know this is not at the core of your belief and it's not the topic today, but I just want to mention one more thing. Well, to ask you actually one more thing to think about it. So let's presume that there's a possibility it is hollow. Let's presume that it is hollow. How would it have come to be the only hollow planet or moon or whatever celestial body or something? Is that even the right term, celestial body? I don't know. How would it have come to form that way when everything we've seen is mass coming together and forming a circle? A sphere.
Okay, so I don't want to talk about UFO and aliens. Like, this is so off topic. My Muslim membership card might get cancelled. So there was a thing that I read, and that there was one government, and I'm not going to name any particular government, that actually projected something at the moon, and they were looking for the hollowness of it. And another argument, and some information came back that it might actually be a base. It's actually the outer shell is something, and the inner is a base. Now, again, this is very off topic. It's not something as a Muslim that I stand by. It's just information that is out there. So personally, I'm still pondering and putting a pause on that. As far as galaxies, other creations, other civilizations, again, the Quran does mention that we are available and open to that in some ways. So I'll put that there.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Okay. Yeah. So I'll just show this. We're not going to talk about it again, but Zagros was saying that he's had access to moon orbiters for surveys, geological surveys, and he's seen photos. There are no bases, but as you're saying, it could have been inside the moon, right? Not like the whole moon is the base, right? Is what you're saying, or a theory. But yeah. Anyway,
shout out to Zagros. We got into an online argument last week, and we've made peace. But yeah, shout out to Zagros. And
it's funny how there's like lore around this channel now. Like there's characters that reappear in every live stream.
We crossed paths, basically. I mean, like, I literally was like, "Don't speak to me that way," and he was like, "No, swear on the Quran, give me a yes or no answer. Islam needs to be questioned." And I'm like, "Yo, I'll answer the question, but don't talk to me like that." Anyway, the question that he asked, I agreed with him. It wasn't like we had a thing, but we're cool now. So shout out Zagros and Brother Ben. Anyway, well, let's get to the point. Right? Why do I believe? Right. So that's the topic of the conversation. Right. Yeah. So an atheist has kept my belief in God. And so that is the situation that happened. So actually, let me just compose myself now.
Wait, has kept to your belief. So where was it first? Like, where did it come from first?
Okay, I've got to tell you the story. It's 2 minutes, and then
Okay.
you'll understand how it came about and how it ties back to the Quran. So I'm about between 11 and 13 in school, and we've got English, and we had a particular teacher, and he was have you seen the movie The Addams Family? Yeah, just very pale skinned, close to death looking, witch features, and it was just, he was scary. Like before you went into class, he would start throwing the desks around and the chairs, and he would make you stand outside for 3 minutes to know that don't mess with me because I'm angry. And there was a chain of students that knew that, like, what his mood was. So that was my teacher basically. So we go into class, me and my little Muslim friend, and he's sitting next to me, and we've got class, and we're talking about a character, and the character is on a cliff. And the teacher asked, well, what is this character about to do? And I was reading the text, basically. And, in my little Muslim head, the first thing you do is you ask God for guidance. That would be the first thing that you need to do when making you're on the edge of a cliff, you need help. That's what you do. So that's what I said. I said, oh, sir, you would go and pray and ask God for help. And he just came at me, slammed his hands on the desk and went, boy, there is no God. And the sooner you understand that, the better you'll be in life. And I was like, what? So this was the first atheist. This was the first blasphemy that I had. Now, in my mind, even though I had Muslim friends, my idea of God was he was in the penthouse, and under him were all these little departments. Like there was the Muslim department, there was the Hindu department, there was the Christian department, and there was Jesus, and he was like a department manager, and and all the prophets, etc. So everyone was treated fairly, and I was okay with the fact that I've got to understand religion more. But I believe that the fairest outcome is there's one God, and he's got all these little mini departments under him. So as this teacher has said that and slammed his thing, I've gone pale. And he's walking. He said, well, I'm gonna write your dribble of an answer on the board. And so he starts walking to the board. Let
me just make it clear. What a dickhead. Like, not you, the teacher.
He absolutely was, and he was proud of it, and we're proud of that. So that was the way he was. English literature, so he's a bit theatric. But but at that point,
English majors, please don't come at us in the comments.
Disclaimer. At that point, I'm thinking lightning is going to come through the window, the school's going to shake. He's got to be punished for that. Like Moses, and something's bad is about to happen. What do we do? And I'm like, man, I got to pray for this guy, because I'm in the room, he's in the room. The school might implode. Something bad is really going to happen. So I go to my Muslim friend. I'm like, what do we do, man? Who do we pray to? And he's like, I said, was he Christian? I was like, oh, we can ask Jesus. I was like, no. Then he's like, no, man, you can't do that. Shirk. You're going to sin. I was like, okay, do we ask Allah to ask Jesus to help him and correct his mistake? What do we do?
Because the guy's from a Christian origin or something?
I mean, okay, non-disclaimer, this is not a thing. He weren't Muslim, and so again, I was thinking he possibly was Christian. And, again, generally people were Christian. I'll stand by that. I would stand by the fact that he was a Christian and not a Jew, because our Jewish friends or people that were Jewish stood out and had particular characteristics. So I presumed, and rightfully so, that he must have been a Christian, or that God needed to talk to him. So again, I'm trying to help him out. I'm trying to make sure we don't all burn right now. And he comes back and goes, what are you talking about, boy? And I'm like, sir, listen, I just are you telling me that? Because I wanted to find out which God he prayed to. So I was like, have you ever prayed? Ever? Just once, have you ever prayed? And so that was my question, because I wanted to find out which God to pray to. And he just looked at me, and he just fell into his chair, collapsed into his chair, and everyone looked at me. I was like, you killed him, what have you done? And I was like, I don't know, I was trying to ask about God and trying to help him. So, oh man, I was such an innocent little boy, right? So I was like, I felt bad that I killed him, because all the life went out of him. And he goes, right, boy, right. Well, you've stumbled me today. And I was like, huh? He's like, yeah, once. I said, I was on a plane going to South Africa, and I was with my wife, and the engine lost power, and we were going down, and I prayed. And he said it with an attitude. He said, I didn't pray for me. I prayed for her, that she would survive and she would be okay. And he said, I didn't realize that. And I said, then what happened? And he said, I prayed and I said that let her survive and not me, and you and me will see each other. And that's fine if that's the way it's going to be. But I did pray, and the engines came back, and we landed. I said, so you survived, and God answered both your prayers, and you didn't say thank you. And he went, get out of my classroom now. And he sent me out. And he sent me out. He did the rest of the class for like 5-10 minutes, and then he called me back in, and then he thanked me, and he said, I didn't realize that I didn't say thank you. And after that, we were cool. But that kind of was like, even the most even a person that hates God, even a person that doesn't believe in God or has their gripes against God.
It sounds like he believes in God to some extent.
Maybe there's that one grain, that mustard seed that we talk about. Maybe there is that one atom at some point in a life where we will call on God and our belief will change. And so that kind of leads to apostasy also, where I was like, you can't kill people because, that sounds so bad, but
there's a chance they might turn to Islam.
They may turn. So therefore, where does this apostasy come from? And then I did see Abu Layth, and I've actually seen his whole. I saw Abdullah Samir. I saw his video on Abu Layth about him on apostasy, and he does a breakdown. And there's nothing in Islam. He was actually condemning, like, how are you going to give people 3 days? Like, the Prophet did not. Had years to get someone to turn. What are you doing? What are you thinking? What, 3 days and they're suddenly going to do it? Anyway, so that.
Wait, I want to bring it back to the story for a second. I'm not gonna lie, it does sound very comical and theatrical, but I believe you that it did happen. So the part that didn't really sit right with me. So God answered his prayer, by saving the plane, right? Because saving his wife. And so what about the many cases of planes that went down where the pilots themselves were praying, right? In that case,
I can only tell you the story in my mind at that time, and so that is where my head was with it.
So that was his reasoning, not yours.
That was his reasoning, and so that then extended.
No, but you did say God answered your prayer, right?
Yeah.
So you think there's a correlation there that because he asked, the engines came back.
As a man of faith, yes.
So at that time. Okay, so if the story had been that in the teleprompter they heard, or sorry, not teleprompter, the voice recorder in the cockpit, they heard the people praying and then nothing happened, praying to Allah, praying to Jesus, whatever, and nothing happened and they died. Would you see that as God not answering the prayer?
Okay, so this is going to be about predestination. This goes into a whole different topic, but I'll give you the simple answer, and then if we move on to it, we move on to it. But then as a Muslim, it would be Allah's will, in a way, that maybe there was something that was meant to be, maybe this was preordained, maybe there's some ultimate wisdom in why this happened. But this opens up for a whole bigger topic. Mm-hmm. But I'll give you the short answer.
Okay, and to get back to the story, so you were already a believer, right? You were a child, and that story made you believe in God more.
That keeps me from never not believing in God.
Personally. So if that story never happened, so what it is about that story that's compelling that keeps you believing in God?
Because that one moment, that little moment of prayer, that little moment of connection to God, that if even in your worst times, even if you're departed from God, there is a chance that you may call upon God, and there is something higher than yourself that creates a situation that comforts you.
So that was this is a general God then that you're thinking about in this case, right? Because he prayed to Jesus probably, right?
Okay, so then I'll move forward now. So now that's my belief at that point, that we've got these little departments. And my clear understanding of all four religions in general hasn't really been more apparent until the last 2 years, for example.
Okay.
But as my general feeling has been that, yes, people are entitled to believe what they believe in. From a theology point, yes, the Quran has differences. And so then this would probably lead me to, like, now how what led me to kind of just understanding all the religions. But as a okay, so here's a disclaimer or whatever it is. In terms of my family, we do have everything in it. Like, we've got Christian, Catholic, Sunni, Shia. So the foundation has, I could have led me in different directions anyway, but the foundation was mutual respect for everybody's belief. And let's not start you don't have to get into an argument with people basically over it, to show each person their respect. And I was always like that. And my mum instilled that into me, that always have respect for other people's beliefs. You may not agree with them, but it is something that you have to respect. And, you know, I did have Muslim friends, and sometimes, you know, when we had our Hindu friends, they may say something that was mocking. And I was like, bro, that sort of behavior isn't pleasing to God, I don't feel. So, like, don't do that. Like, whatever they believe. I remember a particular instance, our friends were fasting, and my Muslim friend, he was like, oh yeah, they're praying to a God that sleeps or something like that. And I was like, I was just like, that ain't cool. Just, you know, that's not something you should be saying. But I mean, that's how we move forward. So in terms of now and going back through religion and tying that back to the Quran in terms of, okay, fine, do the theology. So about 2 years ago, there was a post and it said, I love Jesus because I'm a Muslim, peace be upon him. And I said, oh, you know, Ameen, and, you know, prayers to everyone and blessings. And it was, I just said it was just a general, it was a unified prayer group, basically. And I got attacked by a Christian and an ex-Muslim online. Like, this Christian came on and he was like, tell me about atonement, tell me about this, tell me about that. I'm like, look, I'm just giving general prayers, man. I don't want to get into a theological debate with you, you know. And then all of a sudden I had an ex-Muslim from Australia, and she comes on, she was like, well, tell me why I went through this in my life, brother. And like, she's going at me, like, so they're both going at me. And I was like, listen, this is just a unified prayer to people. I don't want to get into a theological debate. And then I felt bad. I was like, well, maybe I don't understand something that this Christian understands, and I should look into it. So, you know, I joined a group and I was like, oh, what's the latest, you know, Bible that people read? And, you know, what's the thing? And I got abused.
The latest edition?
Yeah. And they were kind of like, what do you mean latest edition? What are you trying to say, Muslim? Blah, blah, blah. And like, I'm just getting volume of people. And I'm like, yo, I genuinely just want to understand about your religion and what it is and which is the best Bible that people look at. And I get a whole lot of abuse. And so I'm like,
it's Bible dot, you know, copy zip folder number 2 PDF. Yeah, that's the last Bible. Yeah.
You know, and then the Muslims are like, no, brother, it's corrupted. You can't trust it. And then the Christians are like, no, we don't believe in your prophet. Anyway, so I was like, listen, I'm not here for that. Then so I excluded myself from that, and I kind of just started reading a bit, and then I was like, let me look at textual criticism. And so I really stumbled on things and insulted people really with good intentions. So I came across Bart Ehrman. And then I was like, and very naive. I was like, oh, hey, guys, you know, I've just seen Bart Ehrman and his textual criticism. Oh, has anyone know about any other counter arguments, or has this been done on the Quran? What do you mean he's an atheist? He's not even a Christian. And they started attacking me even more. And I'm like, dang, what is it that I need to do in order to appease everyone? So I looked into his work and then looked further into the Bible. And then I started doing a proper theological sort of, you know, research into it. And then I went, okay, well, now I need to go into Judaism. And then I went into Judaism and went to the original sources. And
wait, why is it just the Abrahamic religions that you were looking at?
Hinduism, and again, I'm onto Hinduism, but it's so complex to me at the moment that I'm still going into it. I did touch on it, but it doesn't, there's things that don't add up, or it's not clear to me. The information.
Wait, I have another question then, because you thought of Hinduism because it's one of the major religions that's not the Abrahamic religions. Do you think that there's a possibility that one of the other dead religions, or just small religions, or not the prominent ones, could be the truth, but it just hasn't spread? It's not its era to spread or something. Just like Islam at some point was a minority.
So in the Quran, where it says there are things you know and things that you don't know, and that there are prophets that we are not aware of, I would classify them as those.
No, I'm saying after Islam. I'm saying just put Islam aside. Like, we can't fall back on what the Islam says about other religions after it, because there is no other religion after Islam, according to Islam. But if you're looking at Hinduism, for example, that goes against Islam. So just you looking at it as already outside of it.
No. Actually, and again, this
not you looking into it going against Islam. I'm saying Hinduism being the truth is impossible in the Islamic paradigm. Right?
No, but what is their truth? This is the thing. This is the interesting part, and I've got to study more into it. But and again, it's Dr. Zakir Naik did say that your original gods were formless. They were not of a shape. You hadn't made them into idols, and so therefore your scripture would still apply. And then he went through some principles. Now I do want to look further into it. That was the original form of Hinduism, a formless god, an unseen god. And then would that tie into Quranic values, for example? Because
okay, let me ask it this way. Are you evaluating any religions with the possibility that they are the truth and Islam is not?
Constantly.
So is there a possibility in your mind that another religion, dead or alive, is the truth, but it's not the Abrahamic ones?
Okay, so when you say the truth, that is by definition to the individual. And that is, so your truth is there.
The truth, let me define it this way, is the one that God, the real God or gods or whatever it may be, actually revealed. And a lot of the other religions are either some version or corruption or whatever it may be, but it's not the true religion. Do you think that's a possibility, that there's another religion that's true and Islam is not?
I haven't found it as yet.
Do you think it's a possibility?
Yeah. And we're supposed to test our knowledge, and we're supposed to look at other things. And if I come back to Islam, that means that I'm solid in my belief, that I've wandered, I've looked at the forest, and I'm coming back to this tree because this tree is standing my thing. And again,
no, I like that methodology, but what I want to ask as the last question in that line of thinking is, or I don't want to say last because I'm probably going to have more questions, but if that is the case, that you're looking at other religions, inspecting them as objectively as you can. Obviously, everyone has a bias, but you're doing your best. You're accepting the possibility temporarily that there might be another religion that is the absolute, actual religion from the real God. Then, in that case, why are you stopping at the big ones? Like, is there a rational reason why there could be a smaller religion that is the truth? But
I've looked at the principles of Buddhism. There are probably smaller ones. I mean, in terms of access to information, that would probably be my first where I've started off big. And I don't think that my knowledge has, so there's things that I thought I knew, and then I've met a rabbi and his knowledge is even further back. So I'm going, my journey is going to then, ancient Egypt, and still going back and seeing where things tie in or don't tie in. So I am open to it, but I'm happy in my Muslim state as we are, and I think you feel better about it. But okay, fine, this is my truth, and when we say truth, as long as it's not imposed on anybody, and we are not disrespecting other people, for their belief. Like, so for example, the other caller who told you, oh well, you're going to see what happens when hell comes. That is not the way a religion should be, maybe conveyed. As far as
here's the problem with live and let live attitude in religions, and I'm not saying one should not have that attitude, but I'm thinking from the point of just conclusions. So if I truly believe that hell is coming, right, and people, if they don't know the truth, or if they reject the truth, or whatever version of kufr you believe in, if they cross God the wrong way, then they will go to hell, and God thinks it's deserved, therefore it is deserved. I would make it my life's mission to get them out of there. And I can see myself going down the path of, even kind of coercing people into it because it's for their own good. So for me, the attitude of live and let live almost makes less sense than coercing people into religion, because you're just accepting that they're going to hell. What do you think of that?
It's a beautiful question, and it's a thing. Who's your not? I was going to say your friend. I don't know if you know him or not, and I can't remember his name. And no, I sent you the video for him. In the comments, I gave you the title for him. He's that ex-Muslim, the Shia ex-Muslim. Oh, what's his name? Avram, is it or something?
Is it Armin?
That's it. That's the one. Okay. So right, yeah. So
I'm not too familiar with his videos, but I know who he is. Yeah.
So that one video where he said, attack Islam, and he was kind of like, well, as you are trying to help us, we are trying to help you in what we believe is the truth. So we believe that this will damage you. So therefore, we are trying to be empathetic and bring you out of religion just as much as you are trying to bring us into religion. So where would you stand on that sort of philosophy of both being on equal terms?
Okay, couple of things there. I do want to answer that, to comment on his philosophy on that, but I still want to hear your answer. How do you reconcile live and let live with the fact that this live and let live attitude would you're just watching them lead themselves to hell, kind of?
My job is to invite people to Islam, and as in my character, in my interactions, in the way I deal with people, and whether that falls into giving dua or dawah, or and again, I would hope that we try not to label each other just by having conversations. I don't think it helps anybody. But if I do talk about religion, this is what it means to me. Here's some information. Fine, if that's for you to take it or not. And Islam can never be an oppressive thing, and it shouldn't be. And
you're saying can never be, as in if it was implemented correctly, it should not be?
Yeah, no. How can it be? It can't be. Again, Abu Laytham, it's an hour and a half video where he goes into it, has opened my eyes to that. Well, not opened my eyes to it. I always believe that people should have the freedom of religion and also come back to God if they wanted to.
Well, let me clarify my position on that. So when I say, for example, the live and let live attitude doesn't quite make sense to me, I'm not saying that you should behave that way. I understand your rationality behind it, which is I'm going to invite people and I'm going to invite them through my actions and through showing the kindness of Islam and so on, because that's more effective than coercing them or labeling them or another hostile approach. I understand that. But in my mind, I also understand the kind of person who freaks out because they realize how big, this is from a humanitarian point of view. I'm not even talking about people who have power trips, who are doing it for the wrong reasons, whatever. I can see an empathetic person becoming a bad person because they think my niceness isn't working. Or for example, let's not take it to the paradigm of non-Muslims, just looking at your children, for example. They're not praying, right? They don't want to pray, or they're not memorizing the Quran. I have the authority to beat them. And according to some interpretations, some hadiths, I have the authority to do that. But even if I didn't have the explicit religious authority, I would think to myself, which is worse, beating them for a bit or them going to eternal hell? So in that case, how do you reconcile live and let live for your own children, for example, with if I'm too lax on them, they might go to hell? You know what I mean?
So are you advocating the pain theory?
No. I'm trying to understand. Here's the thing, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying all Muslims should be beating their kids because that's what Islam says, or that's my conclusion. I'm saying I can see how a good person could come to that conclusion. And I see obviously that most people are not coming to that conclusion, or at least a lot of them aren't. So I want to understand you as someone who hasn't come to that conclusion. Why not? Or what do you think of this idea that being lax is just allowing them to go to hell?
I don't think we can, as a Muslim, and you might correct me on this, but my journey, so if someone else is determined to go to hell, or they don't even believe hell, so then maybe it doesn't affect them. But I've tried, I've asked, I've done what I can. That is between the individual and their journey. So is it Abu Talib? And he the Prophet tried and begged him, and he couldn't do anything for it. And it was like, well, that was what you could do. So I'm satisfied that the best I can do is invite people, and if it brings them joy and it brings them fulfillment, then that's fine. If it's a burden and it's horrible and it's painful and it brings them, more suffering, then maybe you're not ready for it, or maybe your knowledge needs to increase, or maybe there's a different avenue for you. And for example, there are now atheist churches, and I saw your conversation with Secular Spirit, you know, and they are going to church, they are meditating for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, for example, and they're not playing, you know, they're playing music that inspires them. So is it replacing one sort of religion or dynamic and theory to another? So that's where
I think it's very different. I mean, there's a lot of differences there, but before I answer that, I want to bring it back to, you asked me about Armin's statement, right?
Yeah.
And where I stand on that. So I'm quoting you, quoting him. So if I'm not quoting him correctly, please forgive me, everyone. So his mentality is, just as a religious person is trying to save you from hell, or, you know, do it for your own benefit, he is trying to get you out of your religion for your own benefit. So I understand that sentiment, and it's kind of there was an analogy, I can't remember the name of it, but the people of the cave, was it Plato's cave? I don't remember, but point is, you want to show people the truth to free them, right? It's the same on both sides almost. However, I don't exactly agree, because I don't think it's going to work, at least not for all people. Like there might be different approaches to it, but I think there's a lot of people where it won't work to convince them that Islam is not the truth, even if it's for their own benefit, for them not to be a believer anymore. My approach is more like, get them to think, so that even if they are remaining a Muslim, even if they still think Islam is the truth, their interpretation of it, like yours, for example, I'm sure you're not going to harm anyone with your interpretation, and hopefully not even your own, you know, anyone under your control, like your offspring, for example. And that's like, you're already not someone that I'm concerned about. So my kind of approaching believers would be to get them out of being of the mindset of whatever God says, whatever my, you know, sheikh tells me God says, or whatever I received the information I'm going to follow, to I'm going to think about it, and I'm going to remove the harmful parts of it, or at least be convinced that God didn't mean the harmful way. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So I don't think his approach would work for everybody. No.
And we are on that struggle together, because and again, this is where, if I am in interactions, people should be knowledgeable, study your deen, study other religions, understand what you've got in front of you also, and also understand what an atheist may have in front of them also, and respect it, and dialogue, and that's how we just move to a higher consciousness, in, you know, because I don't think we're ready as humans to get to the next level, the way we're conducting ourselves. But yeah, I would, and again, this is even with my interactions with you, you know, we disagree on a view of something, but I will look at 4 or 5 different sources to see whether you're right, whether there's different thoughts on something. And, you know, again, when even, and again, as a Muslim community, if we do see something that is damaging, then we need to address it, you know, and we do need to address it. So again, with a recent situation, you know, I felt the same problematic definitions were being used, and, you know, took action, you know, in whatever activism way I could do. And that goes on both sides. That goes on the Muslim side and on the non-Muslim side. If there is any action that leads to any of us harming each other, then that needs to be put a stop to straight away. Anyway, so that would be my belief and disbelief.
Oh, speak of the devil, Secular Spirit is here. He was so to answer your point about the churches that we were talking about in our live stream, which people go check out Secular Spirit's channel. We have streams there sometimes. So we were saying how, or Secular Spirit was pointing out how sometimes people need, or they have this community taken away from them, or this religion does serve a purpose in that way. So what do we replace it with? And he was suggesting, as some places already implement that, some kind of secular church or a religious church, let's say, where it's not really about being a religious, perhaps, or maybe a version of it is whatever religion you're in, this is not about the religion part. And I don't think that's replacing. You were saying, what was it that you said? That it's
I said, does that replace one sort of construction with another, which isn't a bad thing. You know, when I pray, I feel I'm meditating. When I, you know, listen to a sermon, I'm getting something that inspires me or uplifts me. They're doing the same. Okay, you know, it's a replacement of things. It's not necessarily see, this is the thing, that where's the difference, and then can any one of us condemn it, and no, I don't think so.
Well, I'll tell you my objection to that they're not exactly equivalent. I mean, that's not necessarily what you're. I'll tell you what it is that I find potentially problematic with the God approach to a church compared to that secular approach we were talking about. So one could potentially induce bad ideas in either church, right? Like you could have some kind of supremacist view that comes out of this secular church. And I'm not saying this is what's going to happen, but let's say in a fringe scenario, those people think they're better than everybody, for example, and they start having more and more hateful views. That is possible. However, that can be tackled more easily than an idea that is God-backed or that someone thinks came from God. So that's what I find problematic about religions, is that I've given this analogy before. It's like a Trojan horse. It can be filled with a lot of things that, whether you think the real God intended or not, or the founder of the religion, this authority that a religion has, or any big ideology like that, sneaks in certain ideas depending on the interpretation that could be harmful. That is the objection that I would have.
That is deep.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. All right, and then just a counterpoint. So are you saying that the belief in God is stronger than disbelief in God?
Interesting question. Wait, let me think about that for a second.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Bless you.
By the way, thanks for the super chat, Ashok Chahar, I'm guessing. I hope that I didn't butcher that name. Okay, so you're saying, can you repeat that again? Does belief in God...
Yeah, is as strong as disbelief in God?
It's stronger, I would say. It depends on the person, but the disbelief in God, at least I can speak for myself. Let me just take it one step at a time. My disbelief in God is a disbelief in the claims made about God, because all of these claims are human, man-made. At least there is no evidence to point that any of these claims that say God said so-and-so are actually from God. So by default, I believe they're not from the God, if that God exists. So my point is not a disbelief in a creator in general. I don't know. I don't have a position on that. And I think that is... What do you mean by stronger then? Like being sure of it?
We've got... So you and me are standing across from each other, and you are absolutely convinced that there is no God, and you're willing to take life in order to prove, because in your mind, I'm a danger with my belief system. But
we see that less often than the others, and not to vilify either side, but I'm saying it's less likely. It is possible that someone would believe there is no God, and therefore the other side is so harmful it must be gone for the greater good of society, or so on. That could happen, but it's less likely to happen.
Brother,
yeah.
Wait, hold on. Whoa. Okay, so
I thought that's what you were.
Yeah, no. That is. But we do have a situation, and this is where our ever lasting inspiration for knowledge needs to keep going. In India right now, we have that problem, and that is developing, where they are trying to be secular. There are parts of it that are literally calling for the wiping out of Muslims. There are parts of it that are calling out for the wiping out of Hindus, because they don't want religion. They want to put the nation first, and so there are some things going on, man, and it's scary. So
I think that involves more factors, like political factors, and the friction between those groups in that area. For example, India, there's a lot of stuff going on there. I think that's part of it, is this belief that not only is the God idea harmful, like that's how, as far as I go, but also they see certain situations happen and they're like, that's proof of me thinking that all of these people need to be gone, right? That's what fuels that kind of so-called, I don't know, militant atheists, if you want to call it that, who will actually harm you. I still don't think it can be as easily backed as, like here they're falling back on this idea of, I see the evidence that those people are harmful and therefore they need to go. It's still weaker than the position that God says those people are harmful, and in some cases God says they need to go, or even I won't touch them, but God will torture the hell out of them. I think that's easier to get to a fighting stance from there.
Okay, I think we'll have to ponder that one.
Yeah. That's okay. And again, to reiterate, that's not me trying to win one or anything. I'm telling you exactly how, like, it goes on in my mind.
No. I love the fact that we can have a discussion and some things that we are both want further thought about. We take a step and say, you know, I want to ponder that. Even from our last conversation, there were things that you made points on, and I pondered it and found out more information. So, yeah, I'm all good with dialogue and pondering and us not trying to win one over, but just share our
I know. We're just explaining for the chat because some people get a little too enthusiastic the wrong way.
I'll see it afterwards. To the chat, blessings to everyone. Be friendly, be nice to each other. You know, don't let the amplified rhetoric, you know, be hateful towards each other. You know, we're all sharing this land. You know, let's try and understand each other better.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for the kind last words and for calling in again.
Thanks, buddy. Take care. We'll speak soon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to add you just yet, Dr. Kabeer. I'm adding you in a couple of minutes, but can you clarify in the private chat if you are a believer or not? I'm just curious. And also we got, Zagros wanted to say something to Friendly Muslim. Unfortunately, yeah, he's gone. So you can send him a chat. I'm sure he's going to be in the private chat. And I'm sorry, Warped Eyebrow, if you're still watching even, I missed this chat from a while back. I bookmarked it and forgot. Anyway, thanks for the super chat. Have you heard about Sheikh Imran Hussein? He talks about Islamic eschatology and linking prophecies to modern times and talking about the end times. No, I have not. Curious about it. If I do have the time, I'll check him out. But no, sorry. No promises, to be honest, but we'll try to give that a go. All right. Thanks again for the super chat. Let's see. There were a couple of, this is funny. This is from earlier, Muslim with an Attitude, when he was on the stream. Say the N-word, do it, end your YouTube career. First of all, it's not a career, but I get what you mean. Nigeria. That's all I'm going to say. It's just, there's no point to that. Let's see what else. Okay, I'm going to get to the next caller. The next caller. Okay, I'm going to let him explain himself what his religious position is. So, Dr. Kabeer, I'm adding you in 3, 2, 1. Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. Thank you.
Thanks for calling.
Sure.
So, what do you believe and why?
So I would say my position's pretty open-minded. I'd say definitely take an interfaith approach. So I definitely am sympathetic to faith, but I also am sympathetic to
You come from a background of faith, if you don't mind me asking?
So my family was mixed. Part of it was kind of, you could say, Sufi. I know your folks are from Saudi, right?
Well, I grew up there, but not really attached to the Saudi interpretation of Islam.
Right. Well, I know. I mean, because there are Sufis there too, but they're like kind of under.
Yeah.
They're undercover. So I would say that definitely, and I come from also like a Jewish background too. So
interesting.
Sufi Jewish background, which can kind of mesh, like the Kabbalistic Sufi stuff can interconnect. So I definitely take sort of like a promotion of more of a Sufi perspective. So I definitely dig that. And I think it's more open-minded in its approach. I'm not saying it's perfect, but I definitely think I could make a defense for that point of view. But would I say like your standard Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah perspective? Not so much. I wouldn't try to defend that perspective.
Right. So you said you would try to defend that Sufi perspective. Defend it against what and in what sense?
Well, I mean, not like, I'm just saying in general, because well,
you mean like the truthfulness of it, or why someone would find it to be true? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, something like that. I would say I could see why someone would be more aligned with that, and how it could be something that coexists in society.
Okay, I get what you mean. So you think something like Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that you don't think that's compatible with society per se, or it can coexist easily with society?
a literalistic interpretation of it, yeah, would be very problematic. I would say.
I know you're trying to be diplomatic here and not make a very harsh statement, but
Yes.
I
think the literalism, which is kind of rising, because in the past, most people were more, if you look historically in Islamic history, were more aligned with tasawwuf, but now it's like post-nationalism, people are far more aligned with this nationalistic, kind of, I would say, Salafistic, Wahhabi perspective of Islam that's kind of pervading everywhere. In the area I'm in, where I kind of grew up, there's a lot of it, very literalistic. If your pants are too down, you know, you're in trouble, you know, because there's some hadith that says that if your, you know, clothes drag on the ground, you know, like you have all these bad things because there's dirt on your clothes and you can't pray. And I don't know. I think the ahadith is, I've spent a lot of time studying ahadith, and there's, I guess you could take a perspective that, oh, the scholars know, and you could take a perspective if you're just like a regular person reading it, there's some kind of problems, you know. In my
Wait, you said you could take a perspective that the scholars know that there are problems?
Oh, thank you for asking for the clarification. I mean, like, the scholars could know that they have a secret gnosis. They have the hikmah to know the wisdom behind the hadith that the lay people don't know. You could take that point of view. You know what I mean? Or you could take the point of view that I could be a Google sheikh and I can research it and then I know it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you mean, but a counterpoint to that would be if they have that hikmah, the wisdom to understand that hidden wisdom behind a hadith, they can communicate that to us. I can't replicate their background knowledge, but I can understand their rationalization of it, right?
I think it's a totally fair argument. I'm not saying this is my position. I'm just saying these are positions that exist in the universe. I'm saying, like, I'm trying to find a justifiable position that someone might take for that perspective. But I think your counterpoint is a valid perspective. But I know it's kind of a hard thing because, like, think of like PhD, doctoral students and writers. They use this kind of esoteric language that no one else knows, and they're within this kind of ivory tower. So I think that that's a way that people can kind of protect the hadith, is that they say, look, we're in this ivory tower, we have this esoteric knowledge, thus, you know, any other interpretation can be avoided. You know what I mean?
Any other interpretation? Well, here's the thing though, like what you're talking about, are you talking about the kind of more recent interpretations of reinterpretations of the hadith, or the classical scholars?
That's a good question.
Because here's what I find more difficult. I understand this gatekeeping kind of culture of, and to some extent there might be some validity to it, that you can't just look at something and understand the context, and you don't have the background information. But that ceases to be relevant once the person can give you the background information, right? The person of knowledge. So in the case of someone with a PhD, a physicist, for example, they can try to break down the concept to you because they have the background knowledge and the ability to do that. And you could still maybe not understand it, but someone out there who's not a physicist will. But in these cases, I find it more like when a classical scholar, someone who's more in line with classical scholarship, makes a point and breaks it down to those laymen like us, I find it easier to understand, and it's more consistent within the framework of the religion than the more recent apologetics, because I can see the contradictions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear that. I'm not saying this is my personal argument. I was just saying I think that's a way that people can be protected using the gatekeeping argument to escape these sort of, I don't know, very problematic things like homophobia and stuff. I think that's a really problematic space. Homophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Blackness, like these situations that need to be really worked on, I think, within the community, it's hard because I don't know if I could even argue that I don't think Islam is a monolith. Like, it's hard. Can you argue that Islam says anything, or there's just multiple perspectives and narratives that exist within Islam? Like, I don't know. I feel more comfortable with the latter. How could we argue that there is a monolithic Islam? I don't see that existing. What do you think?
Funny enough, I mean, I think believers are the ones who use that Islam is so and so more than non-believers, or at least more than I would, because they think there's a true essence. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I said I agree with you. I'm resonating.
Yes.
I feel you. I don't think there is a true essence. I don't see
I mean,
that.
to me, the true essence would be whatever Muhammad actually did say, which is unknowable at this point, right?
I agree.
We don't even know which verses truly were from him and which were kind of snuck in or which were lost. There's so much ambiguity there. So for all intents and purposes, when I say Islam says so and so, it's usually, if not always, something that is the majority interpretation across different sects. Otherwise, I'm focusing on Sunni Islam because that's what I'm familiar with, and that's where the biggest number of Muslims are, right? So that's my perspective on it. But there's a lot of things that you can say Islam so and so, and a lot of things that you have to clarify with nuance, what kind and which, what amount of Muslims and so on.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a valid point. I think it is. Like I've seen these commercials. Like there was this show called Ninja Mommy or something, and there's these couples that have these little like TikToks, and they're like, Islam says this, and I'm like, how can you say that? How do you say Islam says this? Like, I don't know if that's doable, and it's hard because, like, historically speaking, we're talking about more than 1,000 years ago, and we're talking about oral tradition, and that's my biggest problem that I see with. Like, I think you could cherry pick hadith and find stuff that you like, but like taking a standard narrative that like hadith is this really consistent moralistic space, I don't get it. Like they're like, here's this isnad, here's this silsila. Like we could see that there's this chain of narrators, and I'm like. And they're saying, "Oh, their memories are so amazing," and I'm like, "I have a pretty good memory, right? Like, I played some video games, and I can, particularly Zelda video games are like one of my favorite kind of games. But like, I've memorized maps in these games, but sometimes I forget certain spaces in the game. Like, I forget a certain part, and I memorized most of it, right? But I'm like, you're telling me that these people's memories are so good that every word is exactly the same, and I'm like, I have a pretty good memory, right? I don't buy that. I don't buy that people can transmit an exact verbatim narrative. And even if it was, I still don't know the hermeneutics. Like I don't know what is meant by these words.
And there's more to it than that. I mean, let me get your thoughts on this. There are already hadiths that come from different narrations, different chains, right? And they would have difference in wording, and sometimes a different in what actually happened in the event. Okay, your camera's on. You're aware of that, right? Okay,
yeah,
we're good. All right. Yeah, so it already happens that there would be several different, avenues to a hadith, and they would have different wording. Doesn't that disprove the whole concept that these people had amazing memories? Like if there was, yeah?
I think so.
So let me ask you this. Did you at any point believe in Islam, in some version of Islam?
I've been, like I said, I've been open to the mystical interpretation. Like I'm the non-literalistic perspective. Like, the stuff that you see that's like in literature, like you see in Star Wars and you see in Dune, like, the Sufi mystic stuff that's kind of connected to Buddhism. I feel open to that kind of perspective.
Open to it, but have you ever believed that Allah exists, for example? In any definition of Allah that's not too vague?
Like a higher power, sure. I'm open to that, but I don't know, like, does a higher power have like a literal name? I don't know. Like, I'm cool with that. Like a transcendent higher power, cool. But do I know what that is exactly like? Is it like the Force, like a mystical element around us? Yeah, possibly, but I don't know. I don't think it's like this angry thing that like shoots lightning bolts at you. I'm open. Yeah. Like I can't say I know that that's true, but I mean, I feel like I'm open to that.
Well, let me float this
Sure.
hypothesis that I came up with the other day. Islam says that it's not polytheism, right? And the idea behind that is, how could there be more than one ultimately powerful God. Like there's only one that's, has all the power. But there are other religions that are polytheistic, but there's, a main God or a God that rules over all of them. And then the rest have limited domains of power. But that's how it is in Islam. There's an angel of death. There's an angel of rain, right? There's an angel of like a bunch of different functions. Isn't that borrowing from polytheism? Like, do
It's
you
actually
think?
henotheism. That's henotheism, and that's what Judaism originally believed in too. It's henotheism, where it's like there's one God and there's smaller principalities like demigods underneath it, but you focus on the one God, and like Vedic traditions like that too, or Hinduism. That's a word people want to use. Yeah.
So is that not polytheism?
Well, polytheism means you believe in multiple gods like equally. Henotheism means you believe it like you focus on one God, but then there are other gods that exist.
Okay. So they have to be equal. That's a prerequisite of polytheism.
Yeah, that's more like what polytheism is. Henotheism is there are many gods that exist, but you focus on one of those gods within all of it. So like if I'm in the Vedic tradition and I believe in Shiva, Lord Shiva, then Lord Shiva is the god I focus on. And then I don't really focus on Vishnu and stuff like that,
Interesting. Yeah, something to ponder.
I dig that.
Yeah.
So that's my perspective. I take a more open-minded perspective. I definitely do not. One thing I'm extremely against is I think we must ban the Mortad laws. It must become illegal everywhere. I don't care what people's definition of it is. It's inhumane and it's evil, and it must be banned. That's my position. So, on that,
you would think that would be a very non-controversial position to take, but unfortunately, there's some controversy there. But yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your beliefs with us and joining the call today.
I appreciate you.
For sure. Yeah. Take care.
All right. Have a great day.
Oh yeah. Before you go, someone had asked, "What did you get your PhD in?" If that's not too personal of information.
That's okay. I have a doctorate of ministry. I have a DMin.
Okay. Well, you want to tell us something about that? What is that about?
I studied interreligious perspective. I did my dissertation on Joseph Campbell's work, which is the faces of the hero, like the many faces of the hero. And I was talking about how that can work within spiritual dialogue, how we all have different kinds of archetypes, and we can focus on that within therapeutic discussion. So, yeah. So interfaith is my thing.
Well, that tracks, I guess.
Goddess religion, all of that stuff. So
yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that with us too. All right. Take care. Bye-bye. All right. So that was also an interesting conversation. Let me read some comments that I had bookmarked, and then I'll get to a few more comments. If you have anything you'd like to ask, do it right now, and then we'll end the stream after that. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat at the same time that I'm talking all the time. So, yeah, Zagros, we have answered that. And Pi was saying this dude should be a therapist about me, I suppose. If only I had the capacity to listen to people's problems, it would take a toll on me. But that how do you know I'm not a therapist? Let's just keep it vague. Yeah. Anyway, let's get to the comments. There was someone saying people take sides on this. Liberal doctorate, not legit, right? To call yourself a doctor, some people think that you have to be a medical doctor. I'm not going to take a position on that. And another comment. Yeah. Okay, so not a lot of comments that I can answer at the moment. So yeah, I'll like to remind you to interact with this video and try to have more of these calls soon. And stay tuned because there's some big things coming in the next few days with Ramadan right around the corner. I'm going to have a series. I wanted to make it one long video, but people's attention spans are short. So I'm going to have a series about Prophet Muhammad and the way that he handled different situations. Let's see if I can become a better man, a better human, a better husband, a better suitor because of Prophet Muhammad. And instead of making it one long video, I'll make it a series. So if you have any suggestions for the names, drop them in the comments after this chat is over, after this live stream is over. And if you are watching this after the fact and you have some interesting timestamps, please leave them in the comments as well. Secular Sakai, yeah, I think I saw the email, but I haven't had time to respond. I will get back to you soon. Sorry about that. That's a good question. Southern mysticism. Will there ever come a time where you feel comfortable to take off your mask? Probably not, not in my lifetime. But hopefully it gets to that point. But I think I am not the person who's gonna come out to the public eye like that. Unless I guess at some point I get doxed anyway. I'll be like, screw it, this is me. Try not to faint like I'm Yusuf, Prophet Yusuf. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining again. Don't forget to blah 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 blah, like, subscribe, all that stuff. And thank you for being here. As always, think critically and think for yourself.